Chapter 864. This is the Ashen Aeon realm? Ling Shiqi stood at the top of a 1,000-foot-tall tree and frowned. After he entered the Ashen Aeon realm, he was greeted with abnormally rich heaven-earth essence energies. It was not spiritual powers, but heaven-earth essence energies. The heaven-earth essence energies here were at least several times stronger than the outside world. Strangely, there was a decaying aura in the heaven-earth essence energies. It wasn't just the heaven-earth essence energies. Even the space Ling Shiqi saw was the same. What he saw were only huge plants. The ordinary grass was as tall as a house, and the continuous forest looked like a mountain range that rose and fell one after another. However, all the plants were in a strange state. Their surfaces were black and purple as though they had been corroded. However, the plants didn't wither. It was possible that they were still alive. Therefore, Ling Shiqi couldn't help but wonder if this was really a mystic realm left behind by sword sage Zhan Yuan. His body moved as the star moon wings, which were dozens of feet long, spread out behind him. With a flap of his wings, he instantly flew several kilometers away. After flying for a while, Ling Shiqi realized that there wasn't a single living creature in this world. There was dead silence everywhere, as though this was a dead world. Just as he was feeling puzzled, a spiritual power fluctuation came from afar. He changed his direction and flew in that direction. He was extremely fast, and in a moment, he saw a dilapidated wall in the distance. It looked like a palace that had already collapsed. In the middle of the sky, there was a strange black object floating in midair. This object was still twisting irregularly, and it looked a little like a living creature. Beside it was a woman surrounded by countless dazzling flowers. She was Fairy Luoying. I never expected you to be the first to arrive. You're not slow. Fairy Luoying saw Ling Shiqi's leisure island. Ling Shiqi immediately understood that Fairy Luoying had deliberately caused a commotion to attract people over. At the same time, he also realized that Fairy Luoying hadn't figured out what the item was. Otherwise, she wouldn't have lured him over. Instead, she would have chosen to keep it for herself. He asked symbolically, "Protectorate Lord Luoying, may I know what this item is? Why are you asking the obvious? If I knew what it was, would I have called you over? There was nothing here, but there was something strange here. Your cultivation isn't high, but you're still a king. Come over and take a look," Fairy Luoying snapped. Ling Shiqi landed on the ground and carefully observed the black substance. This thing didn't emit any dangerous aura, and it didn't seem to be dangerous. However, the black substance had a special aura that was a little familiar to him. He might have come into contact with a similar aura before, but he couldn't recall it at the moment. Even Fairy Luoying, who was at the peak of the sky origin realm, didn't dare to make a move. Ling Shiqi naturally wouldn't make a move. He shook his head. I don't have good eyes. I can't see anything. So. All of a sudden, Celestial Maiden Luoying moved her finger, and the petals around her revolved like sharp blades, slicing through the black substance. The petals drew upon the origin energy of heaven and earth and were extremely sharp. Even the space around them trembled slightly. Just a little bit of the aftershock was enough to make Ling Shiqi feel like he was being cut into pieces. He secretly took a few steps back as his body emitted a Buddhistic glow. He only felt better after activating the indestructible Vajra divine art. Fairy Luoying's strength was much stronger than what she had shown at the myriad spirit meet. Not only did she deliberately hide a portion of her strength, but the heaven and earth origin energy in the Ashen Aeon world far exceeded the outside world. The strength a heaven origin realm expert could produce naturally increased. On the other hand, Ling Shiqi didn't have much of an advantage. He could have fought Fairy Luoying head-on if he had used all his strength, but now, he didn't have much confidence. The black substance was sliced apart by the countless petals as it began to rapidly distort. It looked like it was about to collapse. At the same time, sporadic blue dots of light seeped out. The moment the dots of light appeared, Ling Shiqi's heart palpitated. He was still wondering where he had come into contact with this aura. When he saw the blue light, he suddenly recalled that it was similar to the Holy Lord's aura in his first dream. Ling Shiqi looked at the black substance again. It looked like a pitch-black universe, and the blue dots of light were stars. It was very likely that this item was related to the astral race and the dark shadow race. While Ling Shiqi was still in shock, the black substance suddenly paused. Not only it, but Fairy Luo Ying's petals were also frozen. It was as though time had frozen. Immediately after, the petals that filled the sky turned pitch black and shot back at Luo Ying like a torrential downpour. What was terrifying was that the pitch-black petals left hair-like black lines in the air as they shot out. They weren't black lines, but spatial rifts. When Ling Shiqi realized that something was amiss, he moved his feet and retreated a few kilometers. Fairy Luo Ying let out a strange cry as her figure was instantly killed by the black petals. Cherry blossoms floated down from the sky in the distance, and Fairy Luo Ying walked out unscathed. She pondered, I was just testing it out, but this thing was able to use my strength to counterattack me. Just now, its power was close to that of a Tongxian realm cultivator. Kong Jianba, have you seen enough? If so, come out quickly. A figure suddenly appeared. It was the Heavenly Dipper sect master, Kong Jianba. He said with a smile, I wasn't peeping. I just happened to arrive. This Ashen Aeon realm is very strange. I've been circling around for a long time, but I didn't see anything. Could it be that this is the only strange thing here? As he spoke, Ling Shiqi kept staring at the black substance. After shooting out the pitch-black petals, the black substance returned to its original state. However, just now, the black mark and the astral mark in his body trembled slightly. As the black substance returned to its original state, the mark and the astral mark stopped moving. It's strange, but the more it's strange, the more I feel that there's something fishy about it. Sect Master Kong, do you want to give it a try? Fairy Luo Ying curled her lips. Kong Jianba had seen her fruitless attack, but he didn't refuse. He suddenly punched out, and a fist force that could match the world came crashing down. The fist force stirred the world, causing the ground to tremble and the void to shatter wherever it passed. Breaking through with strength. I'd like to see how you counter my fist. The fist force instantly blasted the black substance apart, turning it into countless black gases and blue points of light. However, in the blink of an eye, these things condensed into a gigantic black and blue fist. The fist came crashing down, causing the sky to darken. It was as though all the heaven-earth essence energy had gathered here. The fist erupted with a blinding stellar radiance. The terrifying might left Kong Jianba alarmed. He stepped on the ground as a towering mountain appeared behind him, piercing into the clouds. It was his heaven and earth aspect. Kong Jianba's attack was actually forced out by the black substance. Chapter 865. With a loud boom, the mountain peaks around Kong Jianba shook violently. With every shake, the ground beneath his feet sank several feet. As the fist force dissipated, Kong Jianba's heaven and earth aspect showed signs of collapsing. With him as the center, a huge crater spanning dozens of kilometers was formed. Kong Jianba twisted his body, emitting a series of crackling sounds. If my body wasn't strong enough, I would have been injured. This thing can't be fought head-on. At that moment, a majestic aura came from the sky as Xian Haoying descended from the sky like an immortal. His eyes flashed as he said, I thought you two were fighting. We would have fought sooner or later. If Lord Xian wants to fight, I'm happy to accompany you, said Fairy Luo Ying coldly. Ever since they entered the Ashen Aeon realm, they had been considered opponents. However, the current Ashen Aeon realm left them puzzled. Furthermore, they had encountered the strange black substance. Before figuring out the black substance's origins, they would not act rashly. Of course, once they discovered the black substance's usage and method, a battle would break out. Xian Haoying walked to Ling Shiqi's side. Ling Shiqi transmitted his voice to him. Xian Haoying looked at the black substance with interest. He didn't take action because Fairy Luo Ying and Kong Jianba's consecutive attacks indicated that ordinary attacks were useless. Instead, it would lead to a stronger counterattack. Under such circumstances, he had to think of other solutions. Since we can't attack, let's let it absorb energy. With a flip of his hand, Xian Haoying set up a white gas around the black substance. The white gas contained extremely pure spirit qi. If a spirit meridian realm cultivator absorbed a portion of it, it would be enough to instantly break through several spirit meridians. All of a sudden, the black substance moved and swallowed all of the white gas like a huge mouth. It's effective. Upon seeing this scene, Ling Shiqi and the other three had the same thought. However, in the next moment, the black substance suddenly expanded as a black gas with a decaying aura spread out. Wherever it passed, everything was charred black and devoid of life. With a wave of Xian Haoying's hand, a white gas appeared in front of him, blocking all the black beams. Ling Shiqi was standing behind him, which saved him some effort. The other two also easily blocked the black qi. Judging from the energy ripples, the black qi had the strength of heavenly yuan late stage. It was nothing to them. However, they were all silent. The black substance was simply unyielding. Could it be that we have to use a special spell technique? Fairy Luoying suggested. Many high-grade items had restrictions, and one had to have the corresponding spell to control them. Following that, she used several techniques to collect items, but they were all useless except for a series of chaotic hand seals. Don't waste your energy. A clear and melodious voice rang out. A multicolored light flashed in midair, and a graceful figure walked out from it. She was Meng Tian, who had never shown herself. Now, all five of them were gathered. You seem to know about this item? Xian Haoying asked meaningfully. Meng Tian was able to defeat the Starfall dynasty's Duke Qi without a fight. She was definitely not simple. After that, he used the Thunderfire dynasty's intelligence network to investigate Meng Tian. However, he discovered that there was no trace of Meng Tian before she appeared in the mystic 10,000 Laws sect. It was as if she had suddenly appeared, and her past could not be found at all. Furthermore, Meng Tiantian's cultivation speed was terrifyingly fast. Fortunately, Ling Shiqi was only faster than Meng Tian, so he was able to barely dodge. What confused Xian Haoying the most was that Meng Tiantian's position in the mystic 10,000 Laws sect was very high. She could use any cultivation method or cultivation resource as she pleased. Even the sect master did not have this right. Therefore, Xian Haoying was certain that Meng Tian was hiding many secrets. Meng Tian did not answer. Instead, she continued, this item was left behind by an almighty expert. Unless it's someone with the same bloodline, no one can do anything to it. Saying this was equivalent to admitting that she knew the origin of the black substance. Ling Shiqi and the others' expressions froze. Fairy Luoying and Kong Jianba took a few steps forward, vaguely trapping Meng Tian in the middle. Meng Tian smiled radiantly. 3 experts at the peak of the heavenly origin realm are ganging up on a weak woman like me. If this were to spread, where would you put your face? Why don't you listen to the origins of this item first? Little sister, there's no need to be nervous. You know a lot of things. If you tell me, I can at least guarantee your safety. Fairy Luoying smiled amiably. First of all, the space we are currently in is not the Ashen Aeon realm. The moment Meng Tian said that, the others nodded inwardly. Ling Shiqi had also guessed that this was not the Ashen Aeon realm. Meng Tian paced and said as she walked, in fact, the Ashen Aeon realm is not called the Ashen Aeon realm. It is only called the Ashen Aeon realm after Sword Sage Tsang Yuan passed through it. If Fairy Luoying had passed through, this place might be called the Luoying realm. And this item is the true entrance to the Ashen Aeon realm. Her words contained a lot of information. Legend had it that sacred spirit experts could open up a space with a wave of their hand. Therefore, everyone believed that the Ashen Aeon realm was a mystic realm created by Sword Sage Tsang Yuan. Perhaps he had left behind some good items and legacies. If Meng Tian wasn't lying, the Ashen Aeon realm was not a space created by Sword Sage Tsang Yuan, but a passageway. The black substance was the entrance. This had indeed overturned Ling Shiqi and company's impression of the Ashen Aeon realm. Even the people from the Northern Wei dynasty don't know what I'm talking about. After all, the Northern Wei dynasty has only existed for a few hundred years. However, this entrance was set up by someone thousands of years ago. That person is the Nether Temple's Holy Lord. He wanted to seal the Ashen Aeon realm, so he used some means to open up a space outside the Ashen Aeon realm, making people mistakenly believe that this is the Ashen Aeon realm. Then, he set up an entrance that only people with special bloodlines can pass through. From then on, he occupied the Ashen Aeon realm for thousands of years. Meng Tiantian's words were shocking. Upon hearing the words Nether Temple and Holy Lord, Ling Shiqi could not help but be shocked. His background was inextricably linked to the Nether Temple. In the first dream, he had personally seen the Holy Lord. Why did this person go to such great lengths to seal the Ashen Aeon realm? What was inside the Ashen Aeon realm? The few of them fell into deep thought as they digested Meng Tiantian's words. After a while, Kong Jianba asked, "Who are you? How do you know these things?" "That's not important." Meng Tiantian shook her head. "What's important is that I know how to open this entrance." Having said that, Meng Tiantian raised her jade-like finger and pointed at Ling Shiqi. "He is the key to opening the entrance. He is the person who has both the nether shadow and astral bloodlines." Chapter 866. Xian Haoying and the others were shocked. They were all experts at the peak of the Sky Origin realm and the leaders of top sects and extraordinary forces. They knew a lot of ancient secrets. They knew about the Star Clan, especially Luoying Fairy, who was the successor of the Four Saints. She even knew some of the truth. As for the Dark Shadow Clan, or the Nether Temple, they didn't know much about them. This force was too mysterious. Even if someone from the Nether Temple appeared occasionally, they would disappear very quickly. It was common knowledge that the power of the bloodline had been extinguished tens of thousands of years ago. Nowadays, except for some high-level demon beasts that still had a trace of the power of the bloodline, it was almost impossible to find such a person among the human race. But now, Meng Tiantian said that Ling Shiqi had both the bloodline of the Star Clan and the Dark Shadow Clan. No matter what kind of bloodline it was, they were all high-level bloodlines. In this era where bloodlines had disappeared, how could someone have two bloodlines at the same time? So, they immediately doubted it. Ling Shiqi looked very calm. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, as if he didn't care to explain to Meng Tiantian. In fact, his heart was in turmoil. He was the only one in the world who knew that he had two bloodlines. How did Meng Tiantian know about it? At this moment, Ling Shiqi's mind flashed. Some things were connected. He suddenly looked at Meng Tiantian and another name appeared in his mind. Meng Tianzong. Besides Ling Shiqi himself, who else had the chance to see the secret of the bloodline? It was Meng Tianzong, who had been hiding in the depths of his soul. When he broke through to the spirit aperture realm on the Gu God Peak, he triggered the bloodline of the Dark Shadow Clan. At that time, Meng Tianzong's consciousness was in his soul. Later, Meng Tianzong's consciousness disappeared inexplicably. After that, Ling Shiqi didn't pay much attention to it. He looked at Meng Tiantian and thought of her extraordinary illusion technique. He also thought of Meng Tiantian's strange behavior in the past few times. The names Meng Tianzong and Meng Tiantian seemed to be overlapping. Ling Shiqi himself had also fallen into a misunderstanding at the beginning. He had always thought that Meng Tianzong was a man, but no one had ever mentioned what Meng Tianzong looked like in the rumors. For those experts who were proficient in illusions, it was easy for them to change their appearance and gender. Previously, Meng Tiantian had deliberately given him the divine dreamscape spirit art because she wanted him to enter the Ashen Essence realm. As for her goal, it was to open a passageway to the true Ashen Essence realm. Meng Tiantian seemed to have seen through Ling Shiqi's heart. She smiled and said, "You finally understand. Since that's the case, then obediently open the passage." At this time, Xian Haoying moved and stood in front of Ling Shiqi. "You better make yourself clear." He could tell that Ling Shiqi had been tricked by Meng Tiantian. Regardless of whether Meng Tiantian was telling the truth or not, Ling Shiqi was the Western Baron King of the Thunderfire dynasty. His strength far surpassed most of the Sky Origin stage experts. Such a person would definitely be the pillar of the Thunderfire dynasty in the future. He, Xian Haoying, had to protect him. You want to stop me? Meng Tian sneered. She took a step forward as her aura suddenly soared. She instantly went from the peak of the Heaven Man Unity realm to the Sky Origin realm. Early stage, middle stage, late stage, peak of the Sky Origin realm. Under the horrified gazes of Xian Haoying and company, Meng Tiantian's strength broke through the clouds, causing the world to tremble. Wisps of nomological power surrounded her. Instantly, the sky was filled with 9-colored light. Above the light, there seemed to be countless gods overlooking the world. Mystic Enlightening Realm. Ling Shiqi and company retreated a large distance. Xian Haoying, Kong Jianba, and Fairy Luo Ying were dumbfounded. This was because Meng Tian clearly wasn't hiding her cultivation level. She had truly broken through from the Heaven Man Unity realm to the Mystic Enlightening realm in front of them. Only Ling Shiqi remained calm. He knew that Meng Tiantian's original cultivation level was far higher than this. He suspected that Meng Tian was at an even higher realm, the Heaven Ascension realm. Now, do you still want to stop me? Meng Tiantian's eyes flashed coldly as she looked at Xian Haoying and said coldly. Xian Haoying restrained his emotions. His expression was as calm as water, and his eyes were extremely firm. Your cultivation level is powerful. I'm not your match. You went through so much trouble to come to the Ashen Aeon world because you don't want to attract attention. Don't forget that the Northern Wei dynasty's senior Chen Xin is outside. You're right, so all of you should go to sleep first. Meng Tiantian's eyes surged with a strange power. She didn't seem to do anything, but Xian Haoying, Kong Jianba, and Fairy Luo Ying's bodies suddenly stiffened. Then, they stood rooted to the ground in a daze. If one looked carefully, they would discover that their eyes were a little empty. Their consciousness had been pulled into an endless illusion. With just a glance, 3 people at the peak of the Sky Origin realm fell into an illusion. Only Ling Shiqi was left in the arena. However, his expression remained normal as he said, Meng Tianzong, the strongest expert from 10,000 years ago is indeed powerful. Ignoring everything else, just your mentality is rare in the world, praised Meng Tian, or rather, Meng Tianzong. You flatter me. So Palatial Master Meng gave me the Divine Dream Spirit Art to get me to come here. Meng Tianzong chuckled. Not bad. You really didn't disappoint me. After cultivating for a few days, you were able to use the Dream Sky to control young Master He. If you hadn't defeated young Master He and Kong Jianba, I would have thought of a way to let you in. Alright, cut the crap. Open the passageway into the Ashen Aeon world. I can recover my cultivation level, and your cultivation level will improve greatly. You shouldn't reject a win-win deal. My cultivation level will improve greatly? Ling Shiqi raised his doubts. If I want to break through to the Sky Origin realm, I can do it at any time. It doesn't matter if I go to the real Ashen Aeon world or not. Kid, you still want to get information out of me. Fine, there's no harm in telling you. The Ashen Aeon world isn't a mystic realm, but a spatial passageway that connects to another continent. That passageway is filled with all kinds of powers, as long as they exist in the world. All the powers are in line with the heavenly Tao and contain origins. Therefore, no matter how you want to break through to the Sky Origin realm, you can comprehend the power you want there. To me, that place is not only a place to quickly recover my cultivation level, but also a way to leave the falling star continent. You were able to cultivate to your present realm in just a few years and possess combat strength that transcends realms. I believe that you will definitely be able to break through to the Sky Origin realm in there. After I leave, I will naturally not be a threat to you. I can also change the memories of these people, so that you won't have any worries. Similarly, I can also control you to open the entrance. It's up to you to choose whether you want to drink a toast or drink a forfeit. Ling Shiqi's heart was in turmoil. He never expected the Ashen Aeon world to be a passageway to another world. At the same time, he had many doubts. What was that world? Why did Meng Tianzong want to go to that world? Did the sacred spirit experts that disappeared in the long river of history, such as sword sage Zhang Yuan, go to that world? However, Ling Shiqi still had doubts about Meng Tianzong's words. Just as Meng Tianzong said, since she could easily control Xian Haoying and company and even tamper with their memories, it would naturally be easy for her to control Ling Shiqi. Then why was Meng Tianzong still trying to persuade him? After all, she was a ruthless person who had killed all the disciples in his sect. Therefore, Ling Shiqi took a deep breath and raised his head. I can try to open the entrance, but I have a condition. Chapter 867. Meng Tianzong sneered. With a curl of his finger, 9 colored threads were pulled out from Ling Shiqi's body. As for Ling Shiqi, he felt his cultivation level drop at an extremely fast speed. In an instant, he had fallen to the border between the Heaven-Man Unity Realm's late stage and peak stage. Ling Shiqi, you have no right to negotiate with me. You have cultivated your entire life and know the importance of your foundation the best. When you were at the Spirit Meridian Realm and the Spirit Aperture Realm, I helped you open the Spirit Meridian Realm and the Spirit Aperture Realm. As long as I am willing, I can make your cultivation level drop back to the initial Spirit Meridian Realm at any time. You have made many enemies. When the time comes, there will be people who will make you suffer a fate worse than death. Meng Tianzong severed the 9 colored threads and threatened. It turned out that what Ling Shiqi thought was an opportunity was actually a trick left behind by Meng Tianzong. However, his expression remained unchanged. The more Meng Tianzong said and did this, the more it showed that the other party couldn't force him to open the entrance. Otherwise, Meng Tianzong would have already taken action. Why waste his breath here? In addition, although Ling Shiqi had the underworld as a life-saving trump card, he probably couldn't even buy an instant of time in front of Meng Tianzong. Therefore, at this point, he couldn't show any fear. Otherwise, he would only be eaten alive by Meng Tianzong. Besides, the real situation in the Ashen Aeon realm was just Meng Tianzong's side of the story. Who knew what was going on? He said without any fear, Palace Master Meng, just do it. At most, I'll die. Unfortunately, I'm afraid this passageway can never be opened again. If I lose my life, I'll be a hero again 20 years later. Unfortunately, Palace Master Meng needs to find a second person who can open the entrance. I don't know how long it will take. Junior, you are challenging my bottom line. Meng Tianzong's eyes focused. Wind and clouds surged in midair. Endless heaven-earth essence energy was extremely violent, like the wrath of the heavens. The terrifying shockwaves caused Ling Shiqi to retreat repeatedly. He continued indifferently, Palace Master Meng, there's no need to do this. I still have the same words. I want to make a condition. Meng Tianzong was full of killing intent, but then all the killing intent and power disappeared as if they had never appeared. A sweet smile appeared on her face. You have courage, insight, and spirit. You already possess the bearing of a true expert. You have the qualifications to raise conditions with me. I made the right bet. Ling Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to block the entrance. Meng Tianzong couldn't control him at all. Now he finally had some initiative. My condition is simple. I want to know the truth about my identity. Huh? Meng Tianzong's eyes flashed. You don't know? No wonder there were a few people from the Nether Temple sneaking around. I can't say for sure who you are, but I'm pretty sure you're the reincarnation of the previous Nether Temple Holy Master. Reincarnation? Ling Shiqi couldn't help but recall the pair of eyes he saw in his dream. He thought of the young man, and now that he thought about it, it really was possible. It's not very accurate to call it reincarnation. At that time, the way of heaven covered the law of heaven and earth, so many people in the reaching heaven realm couldn't go further. They were even killed by the way of heaven. Therefore, some strong people in the reaching heaven realm tried their best to avoid the detection of the way of heaven. Some people didn't want to give up, so they tried to find another way. I chose the path of blood sacrifice. I wanted to gather the blood and luck of tens of thousands of experts to force a breakthrough. Unfortunately, I was still one step behind. The previous Nether Temple Holy Master didn't try to break through until he died. Before he died, he finally found a body that could allow the bloodline of the Dark Shadow Clan and the Star Clan to coexist perfectly. I don't need to say more. Ling Shiqi's face was gloomy. If what Meng Tianzong said was true, then he was most likely a body prepared by the Nether Temple Holy Master. The young man in his dream was a person who could have two bloodlines at the same time. He was Ling Shiqi now. Meng Tianzong also mentioned that the Nether Temple was hiding nearby. Maybe they wanted to take back Ling Shiqi, the body prepared for the Nether Temple Holy Master's reincarnation. With Meng Tianzong in front of him and the Nether Temple Holy Master secretly watching from behind, Ling Shiqi couldn't help but think of Ozu's prophecy again. He would die in the Northern Wei Empire. At first, Ling Shiqi didn't take it to heart. He thought he had enough abilities. However, when facing a strong person like Meng Tianzong, he didn't even have the chance to be teleported into the mansion of the dead. Was he really going to die here? Ling Shiqi silently opened the system and exchanged a few things. Looking at the extra things in the system space, he finally had some confidence. At the same time, he also had some doubts in his heart. Previously, he thought that the young man in his dream had escaped from the Nether Temple and was accidentally caught by the Blood Cloak Pavilion and thrown away on the Blood Fog Island. However, according to Meng Tianzong, the Nether Temple Holy Master had found the young man when he was about to die. That was to say, these things happened 10,000 years ago. Therefore, his body couldn't be the young man in his dream. Besides, if the Nether Temple Holy Master belonged to the Dark Shadow Clan, why did the Nether Temple Holy Master have the bloodline of the Star Clan? He raised his head and asked, "No, first of all, the time is not right. Moreover, if I was the key to the Nether Temple Holy Master's reincarnation, how could I have left the Nether Temple? Also, where did the Nether Temple Holy Master get the bloodline of the Star Clan? You have so many questions." Meng Tianzong was a little displeased, but she still said, "I don't know much about what happened later. There must be some internal problems in the Nether Temple. And you, or your body, should have been sealed for tens of thousands of years and was taken out in the last 10 years. Therefore, I'm also very curious. Where did your consciousness come from?" Speaking of this, Ling Shiqi felt a chill in his heart. It turned out that his body had been sealed for tens of thousands of years. Then, Meng Tianzong continued, "I'm not interested in your specific secrets. As for the bloodline of the Star Clan, it's just a fake god that has fallen long ago. In ancient times, the human clan had almost wiped out the Star Clan. Although there were still some survivors, they hid too deeply and couldn't be wiped out completely. Originally, the human clan had planned to give up as long as the survivors didn't cause trouble. However, they were captured by the Dark Shadow Clan from another continent. The so-called Sanyuan realm was the passage through which the Dark Shadow Clan came to the Falling Star continent. Later, it was found by the Sanyuan Sword Saint. The Dark Shadow Clan seemed to be afraid of something, so the previous Nether Temple Holy Master sealed the entrance again. Even the Dark Shadow Clan couldn't open it. The Dark Shadow Clan was very strong, not weaker than the Star Clan. Moreover, their methods were strange and impossible to guard against. Hongzai had never had much conflict with the human race, so he just let them be. Later, the bloodline power of the Dark Shadow Clan weakened rapidly. They had no choice but to intermarry with the human clan. In order to integrate into the Falling Star continent, they built the current Nether Temple. Therefore, there were many bloodlines of the Star Clan in the Nether Temple for them to study. It was indeed not easy to coexist the two precious bloodlines, but they still couldn't cross the barrier. "Alright, I've said what I should and shouldn't say. If you don't open the entrance, don't blame me for being ruthless." At this time, Ling Shiqi was still digesting Meng Tianzong's words. Meng Tianzong had indeed revealed a lot of ancient secrets, which made Ling Shiqi feel like the amount of information was exploding. Vaguely, he seemed to have roughly figured out everything that had happened in the Falling Star continent for tens of thousands of years. Chapter 868. In the beginning, there were only humans and demons on this continent. At that time, humans had not formed a complete spirit cultivation system, so they could only submit to the tyranny of the demons. Later, for some reason, the star race suddenly came to this continent. They stood on the side of the humans and drove the demons to the northern wastelands. Although the star race ruled over the humans and called themselves gods, they did not enslave the humans as recorded in history. Instead, they helped the humans perfect the spirit cultivation system. Later, the bloodline of the star race began to weaken, and their strength decreased greatly. The four saints of the human race rose and led the humans to overthrow the rule of the star race, changing the name of this continent to the Falling Star Continent. From then on, the human race entered the golden age of spirit cultivation. However, this was for the ordinary spirit cultivators. The real experts found that not only was the power of the bloodline dissipating, but even the laws of heaven and earth that they needed to comprehend were getting thinner and thinner. The many Holy Spirit experts that were born in the past disappeared. It was probably at this time that the Dark Shadow race found the Falling Star Continent. They found that their strength could no longer fight against the entire human race of the Falling Star Continent, so they became the Nether Temple. As time passed, when the last Holy Spirit expert, San Yuan Sword Saint, disappeared, the Falling Star Continent no longer had a Holy Spirit expert. According to Meng Tianzong, it was the heavenly Tao that covered the power of the laws. Those reaching heaven realm cultivators also began to think of ways to break through. Some like Meng Tianzong chose to break through by force, some like the Nether Temple Lord chose to fuse with the bloodline, and some even thought of reincarnation. But now, it seemed that they all failed. This included the shifter emperor that Ling Shiqi had seen in his recent dream. He should have faced the challenge of crossing that step as well, but he probably failed as well. Today, not to mention the reaching heaven realm, there were only a few spirit cultivators in the reaching profound realm. It could be seen that the heavenly Tao's concealment of the power of the laws was even more powerful. It was many times more difficult to comprehend the laws of heaven and earth than before. The age of chaos? Ling Shiqi thought, but he immediately felt that something was wrong. The age of chaos was caused by the exhaustion of the world's spirit energy, but the Falling Star Continent was only a small place in the entire world. Moreover, the spirit energy was quite abundant, but it could not comprehend the laws of heaven and earth. It was as if the heavenly Tao was deliberately restricting the power of living beings. After Meng Tianzong failed to break through, he was lucky to leave a trace of remnant consciousness. 10,000 years later, it was activated by the resentful spirit, which was related to the Ling Shiqi. Now, Meng Tianzong wanted to recover his reaching heaven state cultivation base and find the continent where the Dark Shadow clan had come from. It was also the place where Sword Saint San Yuan had gone. Perhaps she thought that there was still hope for further advancement there. Of course, all this was based on the premise that Meng Tianzong did not lie. Faced with Meng Tianzong's threat, Ling Shiqi shrugged and said, "But I don't know how to open the entrance." "It's simple. You just have to walk in." Meng Tianzong pointed at the black substance. "Walk in directly?" Ling Shiqi raised his eyebrows. He had just seen the sorry state of Fairy Luo Ying and the others. He didn't dare to enter carelessly. "What? Do you think I would deliberately harm you?" Meng Tianzong's tone was disdainful. However, Ling Shiqi felt that Meng Tianzong had harmed him greatly. Although Meng Tianzong had helped him quickly open up many spirit meridians and spirit cavities, making him very powerful in the spirit meridians and spirit cavities realm, even without Meng Tianzong's help, his cultivation would at most be a little slower. He wouldn't have been suppressed by Meng Tianzong and his cultivation base would not have been in the hands of others. Meng Tianzong definitely knew more secrets that he hadn't told Ling Shiqi. He took a deep breath and glanced at the things in the system space again. Then, he stepped closer to the black substance. When he got close, the black substance suddenly expanded and swallowed Ling Shiqi in an instant. However, Ling Shiqi didn't resist, because he felt a very familiar and intimate power from it. Within the black substance, wisps of black chi wrapped around him, like a gentle hand caressing him. The blue light entered his body one by one, making the spiritual power in his body circulate faster. Strangely, the black substance gradually stabilized and soon turned into a semicircular black sphere. Sure enough, an irregular door appeared in front of Ling Shiqi. Wisps of golden light seeped out from it. This was the real Tsingyuan realm that Meng Tianzong had mentioned. It was also a passage that connected to another continent. With a whoosh, Meng Tianzong came to Ling Shiqi's side. However, she wasn't rejected by the black substance. Ling Shiqi turned around and saw that Meng Tianzong's spiritual power was circulating around Ling Shiqi. It was the portion that Meng Tianzong had absorbed. Very good. Next, you just need to walk in. The entrance will stabilize for a very short time, enough for me to pass through. Meng Tianzong couldn't hide the anticipation on his face. Ling Shiqi raised his vigilance to the highest. The closer he was to completing Meng Tianzong's request, the more dangerous it would be for him. He took a few steps forward, and the entrance gradually turned into a door that only allowed one person to pass through. With a thought, the evil demonic light around him flourished. 6 arms grew on his back, and he instantly activated the evil Buddha indestructible body. Immediately, 3 seals appeared around him. In an instant, thunder rumbled, wind howled, and a world of ice and snow appeared. Tripartite seal. Ling Shiqi desperately wanted to enter the door and then forcefully close it. Unfortunately, his plan was good, but just as the tripartite seal was formed, Meng Tianzong snorted coldly. The tripartite seal in the air instantly collapsed. At the same time, Ling Shiqi felt his body stiffen. Then, he couldn't feel his body anymore. Apart from being conscious, he couldn't even move a finger. Meng Tianzong walked over expressionlessly. He stretched out his finger, and a wisp of light instantly entered Ling Shiqi's glabella. The focal length in Ling Shiqi's eyes gradually disappeared, becoming hollow. You have only comprehended the superficial laws of heaven and earth. How dare you show off in front of me? Meng Tianzong smiled disdainfully and said, the entrance has already been opened. You are no longer of any value. However, I'm very curious about which path my old friend took. Meng Tianzong extended his palm, and Ling Shiqi's body walked into the door. Meng Tianzong followed closely behind. In his spiritual sea, Ling Shiqi's soul suddenly opened his eyes. The fact that he woke up here meant that his consciousness had been expelled to this final place. As expected, it still doesn't work. A Heaven Ascension realm expert who cultivates illusions is too terrifying. Ling Shiqi muttered, since she didn't kill me, it means that she has already brought me into the Ashen Aeon realm. I also want to know what other secrets my body is hiding. Chapter 869. This was a strange space. There was no sun, moon, or stars. There wasn't even any matter. There was only shattered space and countless spatial fragments. In the endless spatial fragments, a blurry passageway was faintly discernible. At this moment, 2 figures bathed in dazzling light suddenly appeared. They were Meng Tianzong and Ling Shiqi, who had lost consciousness. Upon arriving, Meng Tianzong almost collided with a spatial fragment. Her expression changed as she immediately formed seals with her hands. Dozens of divine shadows appeared behind her as nomological powers filled the surroundings, repelling all the surrounding spatial fragments. She shouted in disbelief, impossible. Why is the passageway already shattered? It's you. You must have done something. She suddenly grabbed Ling Shiqi's neck. As long as she moved slightly, she could strangle Ling Shiqi to death. Ka. Meng Tianzong gradually increased her strength as Ling Shiqi's body began to twitch unconsciously. He was about to be strangled to death. Huh? Meng Tianzong revealed a look of puzzlement as she said coldly, Netherlord, if you don't come out, your reincarnated body will be reduced to ashes. However, Ling Shiqi's body was still like a dead fish. There was no reaction. Meng Tianzong couldn't help but frown. Could it be that I guessed wrong? No matter what, you are the only clue. Humph, good lad. Consider yourself lucky. In his spiritual sea, Ling Shiqi's soul looked into the distance. He seemed to be able to see through the outside world, but in fact, he couldn't see anything. He was still gambling. His soul was still there, which meant that Meng Tianzong hadn't killed him. Since Meng Tianzong hadn't done anything, it meant that he still had value. In other words, Meng Tianzong hadn't achieved his goal. Not long after, Ling Shiqi's vision suddenly turned black. Following that, he opened his eyes. What entered his eyes was a shattered void. At the same time, he felt excruciating pain all over his body, especially his neck, which felt like it was about to break. Ling Shiqi guessed that Meng Tianzong had the intention to kill him, but he didn't care about it. Instead, he asked, "Is this Ashen Essence realm?" For the Ashen Aeon realm to be called a realm, it should be a space at the very least. But what he saw now was clearly a shattered space. As you can see, the Archean Aeon realm has been destroyed. Meng Tianzong said in a deep voice. She had racked her brains to enter the Ashen Essence realm. Now that she had entered, it was already in ruins. All of her plans had been disrupted. There are spatial fragments everywhere. Even I have to be careful. Otherwise, I will die. Our top priority now is to leave this place and return to the Falling Star continent. Ling Shiqi seemed to have thought of something. He turned around and saw that the door he had entered through was no longer there. The portal has just disappeared, so there should still be a trace of its aura left. If you go and find it, you might be able to reopen the portal. Otherwise, I can only forcefully break through the void. I might still have a chance. As for you, you can only fend for yourself. Meng Tianzong's cultivation hadn't recovered, so she didn't have much confidence in returning to the Falling Star continent. It would be best if Ling Shiqi could reopen the portal. Therefore, she had to force Ling Shiqi. This time, Ling Shiqi didn't hesitate at all. This was because his consciousness had sneaked into the underworld while Meng Tianzong was speaking. He found that although he could enter the underworld, he couldn't communicate with the others in the underworld. In other words, even if he hid in the underworld, he was still in this space, isolated from the Falling Star continent. This way, no matter when he came out, he would still have to face the endless spatial fragments. Therefore, he might as well take advantage of the opportunity to stand on the same side as Meng Tianzong and quickly find an exit. Ling Shiqi stimulated the bloodline power in his body with all his might. A brilliant starry universe appeared behind him. Darkness and stars coexisted perfectly. Sure enough, he immediately felt that something in the distance was attracting him. There's something over there. Ling Shiqi pointed. Meng Tianzong immediately wrapped Ling Shiqi around him and forced his way through the spatial crack. But after a while, Meng Tianzong suddenly stopped, and then a look of horror appeared on his face. At this moment, what was in front of them was a huge spatial storm. Under the storm sweeping, even the spatial fragments were destroyed. If they were touched even a little bit, they would be destroyed. Fortunately, the spatial storm didn't seem to be moving, as if it was frozen in place. Even so, Ling Shiqi felt a chill down his spine. "This is the thing you were talking about," Meng Tianzong said angrily. Not to mention that her cultivation hadn't recovered, even if she was at her peak, she would still die if she encountered a spatial storm. In fact, Ling Shiqi wasn't lying. There was indeed something in the spatial storm that was attracting him. Perhaps it was something left behind by the Nether Lord. He didn't say it, but at this time, to his and Meng Tianzong's surprise, the spatial storm suddenly began to slowly move toward them. Boom! An invisible force exploded, and the entire space kept shaking. The space kept shattering like a mirror. "Let's go." Meng Tianzong pulled Ling Shiqi and quickly retreated. She didn't care about the spatial fragments behind her. Endless divine light flashed around her, and dozens of god phantoms appeared to desperately escape. However, the spatial storm behind them seemed to have locked onto them, and it moved straight toward them, and its speed was getting faster and faster. Ling Shiqi's mind was blessed. He guessed that he was also attracting something in the spatial storm, so that was why it was like this. He quickly asked, "Palace Master Meng, is there any way for me to enter the spatial storm? Have you suddenly gone crazy?" Meng Tianzong looked at Ling Shiqi strangely and said such a sentence. It was too late to run now, but he still wanted to enter the spatial storm. He was looking for death. Ling Shiqi said, "There is something in the spatial storm that is attracting me. That power is from the same source as me. Palace Master Meng should understand what I mean. Yes, Meng Tianzong immediately understood. The spatial storm might have the same nature as the black matter, which was to destroy or stop people from approaching, but Leng Shiqi was an exception. But no one could guarantee that this would be the case. If Leng Shiqi forced his way into the spatial storm and guessed wrong, he would only end up dead. I can let you in, but I can only protect you for 2 breaths of time at most. Are you sure you want to go? This is the only way. It's not that I look down on you, Palace Master Meng, but the spatial storm is getting faster and faster. How long do you think you can run like this? At most, you can live a little longer. Instead of this, why don't you take the risk? Leng Shiqi looked determined. He was not afraid of death. Meng Tianzong's face also showed a hint of surprise. I appreciate you more and more. If you were born 100,000 years later, maybe you would have a place in the reaching heaven state. Go. Then Meng Tianzong stretched out his hand, and dazzling divine light wrapped Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi immediately moved and walked toward the terrifying spatial storm. Chapter 870. But something unexpected happened. Before Leng Shiqi could get close to the spatial storm, the colorful divine light around him was torn apart by the powerful spatial power and was about to dissipate in the blink of an eye. He didn't panic. With a thought, he disappeared from the space. Meng Tianzong's eyes widened. At this moment, he could not feel Leng Shiqi's aura. But he was clearly not dead. No matter how strong the aura concealment technique was, it would not work in front of Meng Tianzong. How could Leng Shiqi disappear? He was naturally teleported to the mansion of the dead. Meng Tianzong's divine light still lingered on his body. At first, he did not expect to enter the spatial storm directly. The reason why he wanted to get close was to roughly calculate the movement speed of the spatial storm. After about 3 breaths of time, he left the mansion of the dead and returned to the shattered space. And his position had already crossed the edge of the spatial storm and went straight to the center. Strangely, at this moment, the spatial storm actually stopped. The power in the center of the storm would have been able to instantly crush him, but at this moment, it did not harm him at all. Leng Shiqi also saw the thing that attracted him. It was a fist-sized bead. He secretly breathed a sigh of relief. This spatial storm was similar to the black matter. It would not harm him. At the same time, it also meant that the shattering of this space was related to the Nether Holy Lord. Leng Shiqi carefully looked at the bead. The surface of this object was bright, and there were traces of destroyed spatial fragments turning into hair-like light rays that entered it. And inside the bead was darkness. There were also some flickering light spots. Leng Shiqi's expression suddenly became solemn as he stared at them. He looked at it for a while and realized that there seemed to be a universe inside the bead. There was actually a world inside this bead. What exactly was this thing? Buzz buzz, suddenly, the bead trembled rapidly and made a piercing sound. At the same time, 2 completely different powers emerged. One was extreme destruction, and the other was infinite vitality. The power of destruction spread outwards, forming a spatial storm. The vitality within the bead seemed to have given birth to a new world. At this moment, Leng Shiqi suddenly froze. His eyes shone with a shocking light, and his mind exploded with thunder. In the depths of his mind, a door opened. Ever since he had obtained the system on Blood Fog Island and comprehended the mesmerizing flurry of flowers, his cultivation path had been the path of integration. He was attempting to fuse spiritual techniques, cultivation methods, and all sorts of strange powers. He was even attempting to fuse the laws of heaven and earth. His original plan was to comprehend the power of the 5 elements and merge it with the powers of yin and yang, 3 talents, for symbols, and 6 paths of reincarnation. With that, he would be able to break through the ethereal state and reach the Tongxian state. Perhaps one day in the future, he could even create a new world with his own strength. But at this moment, he felt that he was wrong. He had been wrong all along. Why must it be fused? Why couldn't it be destruction? Since he couldn't create the world, he would destroy it. Moreover, destruction and life were not opposites. Life represented destruction, and destruction represented new life. Boom! Powerful black and white flowing lights burst out from both sides of Leng Shiqi. It was his trump card, the power of yin and yang. This time, he didn't let the power of yin and yang merge. Instead, he controlled the two powers to collide fiercely. He was going to reverse yin and yang. At the same time, the seal of 3 talents, the formation of 4 elements, the ring of 5 elements, and the 6 paths of reincarnation all appeared. Leng Shiqi moved his mind. The seal collapsed, the formation disintegrated, the 5 elements were reversed, and the 6 paths of reincarnation were out of balance. An extremely terrifying power suddenly surged in the spatial storm. Even Meng Tianzong, who was outside, was shocked. She had also tampered with Leng Shiqi's power. Even though they were separated by the spatial storm, she knew that Leng Shiqi wasn't dead. In other words, Leng Shiqi had guessed correctly. She didn't know how he had gotten into the center of the spatial storm. Now, she didn't know what terrible things he had triggered. Even Meng Tianzong, who used to be a strong man in the reaching heaven state, was afraid of him. "Is this the trump card you left behind?" she whispered. But Meng Tianzong would never know what Leng Shiqi was doing. He was doing something even crazier than Meng Tianzong's blood sacrifice of tens of thousands of his disciples. In the spatial storm, all kinds of power of the origin were raging. It had formed another small storm. Storm of the origin. Leng Shiqi felt like he was going crazy. But he couldn't give up this opportunity. This was a rare state of enlightenment. If he missed it, he might never encounter it again. But now, the power was beyond his control. At the moment, Leng Shiqi was bleeding from his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. His whole body was twitching. He was holding on with his mind. The storm of the origin around Leng Shiqi gradually solidified. It started to condense and shrink, but the power of the storm of the origin was increasing exponentially. But the power didn't increase at all. Leng Shiqi was under more pressure. Gradually, he was on the verge of collapse. If he didn't stop now, he would be devoured by the power of the origin and die without a burial place. At this moment, the bead began to move. With a crack appeared on the surface of the bead. Then, more and more cracks appeared. Bang! Soon after, the bead exploded with a bang, and a destructive force appeared, drilling into the storm of origin energy. The storm suddenly shrank, shrinking several times in an instant. At the same time, another life force poured into Leng Shiqi's body. The endless life force kept him from exploding and continued to maintain the storm of the origin. Leng Shiqi didn't know why this happened, but he knew that now was the best opportunity. He suddenly pulled with his arms. Rip! The storm of the origin was torn to pieces in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. The shattered origin force erupted with an apocalyptic power, and even the spatial storm was blasted open by him. Seeing this, Meng Tianzong couldn't help but open her mouth. There was only surprise in her beautiful eyes. To be able to forcefully blast open the spatial storm, this power was something she couldn't do at her peak. What's more, Leng Shiqi's aura was also full of destruction. He turned his head and looked over. That destructive gaze made Meng Tianzong feel as if there was a blade on her back. Leng Shiqi reached out and the space in front of him collapsed one after another. It was no less terrifying than the spatial storm. What kind of power is that? Meng Tianzong asked in disbelief. Not to mention Leng Shiqi, who was a spirit cultivator of the unity of heaven and man realm, those Ascension realm powerhouses from 10,000 years ago couldn't have such power. What did he experience in the spatial storm? Leng Shiqi looked at his palm and felt a little incredulous. He replied, "I don't know. I'll call it the power of destruction." Chapter 871. The power to destroy the world. It really lives up to its name, Meng Tianzong said in a low voice. Her expression was a bit stiff. She still didn't understand what Leng Shiqi had experienced in the spatial storm, because she clearly remembered that the Nether Hell Saint Lord didn't have the power to destroy the world at all. So even if the Nether Hell Saint Lord had left something there, it couldn't have given Leng Shiqi such terrifying power. Moreover, Meng Tianzong couldn't think of anything that could make a person's power change so drastically in such a short time. Originally, she could kill him with just one look, but now he was a great threat to her life. Even as a reaching heaven state warrior from 10,000 years ago, she found it hard to accept. Leng Shiqi was also a bit stunned. He succeeded just like that? He had obtained the power he had always dreamed of. Although the process was tortuous and brought him to the brink of death, time passed quickly. In less than 15 minutes, his power had advanced by leaps and bounds to an unimaginable level. This was a transformation. Now, even he didn't know how powerful he was. He only had one feeling, and that was power. Unfortunately, before he could properly experience this power, another change occurred in this space. Leng Shiqi looked up. In this empty space, endless black clouds appeared inexplicably. A power that directly struck the soul descended. All the space fragments, including the spatial storm, disappeared in an instant. In the blink of an eye, only the rolling black clouds, Leng Shiqi, and Meng Tianzong were left in this space. The two of them thought of the same word at the same time. Heavenly tribulation. Leng Shiqi had seen 9 leaves tribulation in the demonic miasma mountain range. At that time, he was very far away, but he felt like he was going to be crushed to death by the power of heaven and earth. At this time, he experienced that feeling again. And this time, the power of heaven was 1,000 times stronger than before. As for Meng Tianzong, she was completely shocked. She knew this heavenly tribulation very well, because she had broken through to the reaching heaven state because of this tribulation. This was the path to the reaching heaven state, the reaching heaven tribulation. Leng Shiqi's cultivation base went from unity of heaven and man to unity of heaven and earth to heaven-reaching realm. If Meng Tianzong was only 70 or 80% sure before, he was now certain that Leng Shiqi was the reincarnation of the Netherworld Saint Lord. He just didn't know what method the Nether Hell Saint Lord had used. Leng Shiqi, this is the tribulation of transcending heaven. Both humans and demons must go through this tribulation if they want to enter the transcending heaven realm. The heavenly tribulation had 3 major tribulations: the heavenly thunder tribulation, the mystical fire tribulation, and the heavenly heart tribulation. Anyone who was qualified to undergo the heavenly lightning tribulation would be able to withstand it. This tribulation could be done with the help of some external objects. However, the profound fire tribulation will directly burn your body, so you can only endure it. Spirit cultivator whose body is not strong will definitely die. As for the heavenly will trial, it was the most terrifying one. 80% of Tongxian realm cultivators would fall under this trial. Everyone's heavenly heart tribulation is different. I can only tell you 2 words: attack the heart. Meng Tianzong introduced Leng Shiqi to the heavenly tribulation. As someone who had experienced it, she was very experienced. He was slightly surprised that Meng Tianzong would remind him. Leng Shiqi pointed his finger, and an obvious spatial crack spread in front of Meng Tianzong. Then, the space collapsed and an entrance appeared. This is the entrance to the falling star continent. Palace Master Meng should go back first to avoid being affected. Hearing this, Meng Tianzong looked deeply at Leng Shiqi. She had reminded him just now because she thought that Leng Shiqi would most likely die under the tribulation of transcending heaven. Although Leng Shiqi was strong, he had just obtained this power and was not familiar with it yet. How could he withstand the tribulation of transcending heaven? Meng Tianzong originally wanted Leng Shiqi to hold on for a while and find a way to return to the falling star continent, but Leng Shiqi could easily open the way back. What made Meng Tianzong even more confused was that Leng Shiqi did not have to do this. He was undergoing the tribulation, and Meng Tianzong, whose cultivation had not recovered, could only hide aside. If he failed, Meng Tianzong might be trapped here forever. If he succeeded, Leng Shiqi's power could suppress Meng Tianzong. Therefore, Leng Shiqi's actions made Meng Tianzong very confused. Waves of heavenly pressure fell on Leng Shiqi. He knew that he had been locked on by the tribulation. Even if he ran into the underworld, as long as he dared to show his face, he would still be found by the tribulation. This tribulation could not be avoided. So Ozu's prophecy was referring to this tribulation of transcending heaven. Will I die here? Leng Shiqi did not believe it, but he still said to Meng Tianzong, Palace Master Meng, I have a request. Meng Tianzong thought to himself, tell me. In my life, I have no friends or relatives. This world makes me feel very strange. If I die, I'll have to trouble Palace Master Meng to take care of the Western Baron Imperial residents. Those people are not close to me, but they are still my subordinates. I can't let them suffer because of my death. Also, there is a girl called Blood Moon in the discipline department of the Thunderflame dynasty. Help me tell her that I went to another continent. At the end, Leng Shiqi's tone had a touch of gentleness. Are these your last words? It's not like you. Palace Master Meng, if you talk a little more, I'm afraid you won't be able to go back. Leng Shiqi pointed at the opened hole. Under the heavenly pressure, the hole had begun to twist slightly and could collapse at any time. The path to heaven is not so easy to walk. You, take care. Meng Tianzong left these words and walked into the hole wrapped in colorful divine light. Leng Shiqi looked up at the sky. The tribulation clouds were getting darker and darker, and there were rolling thunder. The terrifying pressure caused the space to collapse. Leng Shiqi held the Thousand Illusion Dao sword in his hand and pierced the sky. The Thousand Illusion Dao sword left his hand and pierced the sky. The sword of annihilation slashed out, and the blade that seemed to split open the sky seemed to tear apart the tribulation clouds. He waved his arms and two huge dragons, one black and one white, rushed into the sky. The two dragons constantly collided with each other, emitting a terrifying will of destruction. Reverse Yin and Yang dual dragon convergence. His eyes were filled with determination. He was already prepared to go through the tribulation. Even though he was not familiar with his own power of destruction, he was very confident. Not only was he confident in his own strength, but the things he exchanged from the system not long ago to save his life in front of Meng Tianzong made him even more confident. The reason he let Meng Tianzong leave was because he did not want to expose his trump card. The tribulation clouds kept churning, but the heavenly lightning did not fall. Instead, it flashed with endless fire. In this dark space, it was as if the sun had descended and burned everything. Leng Shiqi frowned. Meng Tianzong had just said that the tribulation to heaven was first the heavenly lightning tribulation and then the mystical fire tribulation. But now it seemed that the tribulation clouds had gathered two types of power at the same time. Then, another strange power suddenly appeared in the tribulation clouds that struck directly at the soul. Leng Shiqi could not help but feel a chill in his heart. He was really cold. He suddenly realized that his tribulation to heaven would not be three types of tribulation at the same time. Chapter 872. Thinking of this, Leng Shiqi was not worried. If it came one by one, he could rely on his trump card. But if three tribulations came at the same time, he was in danger of dying. Meng Tianzong said that the heavenly will tribulation attacked the heart. It was probably something like an inner demon. When going through an inner demon, one's mind would have to fight with all its strength. How would one have the strength to resist the heavenly lightning tribulation and the mystical fire tribulation? Leng Shiqi did not know why his heavenly tribulation had changed like this. He suddenly had a bad feeling. If there was no other way, he would hide in the Netherworld Mansion. He believed that someone would use the Netherworld Mansion. Then, he would be able to teleport away. Although he could not avoid the heavenly tribulation, at least he could delay it for a while and think of a way to deal with it. At this moment, something strange happened. The terrifying heavenly tribulation clouds in the sky strangely dissipated. They did not disappear suddenly. Instead, they gathered together in an instant, leaving only a few feet in size. In addition to the heavenly might, Leng Shiqi suddenly felt an aura that was enough to make one's soul tremble. The remaining heavenly tribulation clouds rolled. Then, a crack appeared in it, and an eye opened. In an instant, Leng Shiqi's body trembled and became extremely stiff. At this moment, he felt like he was facing the entire world alone. The eye did not have any emotions or waves. It just looked at Leng Shiqi calmly. However, it was this one glance that gave him the urge to kneel down and kowtow to him. He roared, and his body shone with all kinds of divine light. Buzz! A Vairocana stood in the void. Not only that, but several Dharma manifestations of the ancient evil gods, savage beasts, and the netherworld god appeared at the same time. Leng Shichi held his head high and stepped out. Among the Dharma manifestations, golden light flashed and condensed into an indomitable divine shadow. The divine shadow held countless golden palaces in its hands and put them into a divine kingdom. The divine shadow looked like Leng Shichi himself. He did not believe in gods or the heavens. He only believed in himself. The eye in the sky moved slightly, and the invisible power of the world came crashing down. The space around Leng Shichi exploded with a bang, and all the dharmas around Leng Shichi collapsed like paper. Even the space around them collapsed, leaving behind only terrifying spatial turbulence. Pooh! Leng Shichi spat out a mouthful of blood. He hurriedly formed a seal, and the power of the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth spun around him. The 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other, and in his hands, they restrained each other. Waves of destructive power emerged. The power of world extermination continued to intertwine and explode. It was barely able to resist the spatial turbulence, but it wouldn't last for long. Leng Shichi was incomparably shocked. What exactly was that eye? He was supposed to face the heavenly tribulation. Could it be that this was the heavenly tribulation? But it was different from what Meng Tianzong and the others faced. On the other side, Meng Tianzong had returned to the beginning through the exit opened by the Leng Shichi. Xian Haoying and the other 2 Sky Origin stage cultivators were still trapped in Meng Tianzong's illusion. As for the black substance, it was gone. From the looks of it, as long as someone entered once, there would be no next time. Meng Tianzong wasn't in a good mood. She had used all her means to enter the myriad spirit meat. In the beginning, everything was under her control. Who would have thought that the real Ashen Aeon realm would no longer exist, leaving behind only a spatial storm? What was even more unexpected was that Leng Shichi's heaven-defying actions were unbelievable. Now, Meng Tianzong's plan had been completely disrupted. First of all, it wasn't easy to recover her cultivation level. Furthermore, she had planned to head to other continents to find a way to break through. Now, all of her plans had gone down the drain. Since there's no way to break through the Ashen Aeon realm, only the far northern wastelands and the East Sea have a chance. She sighed slightly, but her beautiful eyes immediately widened as if she had sensed something. She stood rooted to the ground as if she had been struck by lightning. Immediately following that, her face was filled with horror. She formed a seal with her hands, and her aura rapidly fell. In the blink of an eye, she returned to the Heaven-Man Unity realm. At that moment, she said in disbelief, "That aura is Heavenly Slayer Tribulation. Who is becoming a sage?" The Heavenly Slayer Tribulation was the tribulation that a Heaven Ascension realm expert had to experience to break through to the Sacred Spirit realm. Back then, Meng Tianzong had nearly died under the Heavenly Slayer Tribulation. Countless Heaven Ascension realm experts had died under the Heavenly Slayer Tribulation. That was how the tribulation got its name. Just now, she had suddenly sensed a trace of the Heavenly Slayer Tribulation's aura. In the current Starfall continent, Mystic Enlightening realm experts were extremely rare. Which Heaven Ascension realm expert was transcending the tribulation? She wasn't the only one. In a small town in the Starfall dynasty, an ordinary old beggar was tasting the food he had just begged for. His face was filled with satisfaction. He took a bite of the hard mantu, but before he could swallow it, his expression turned extremely shocked. He looked up at the sky as a glint flashed in his eyes. After a long while, he muttered, "Is it that two-faced beast or that old friend from overseas? To dare try to break through in this era, I'm impressed." At that moment, he hesitated for a moment before laughing self-deprecatingly. "I'm an old bag of bones. It's best I don't torment myself." In the East Sea, at an unknown depth of the sea, a person was sitting cross-legged. It was too dark here, and one couldn't see his appearance. One could only vaguely make out a figure. The figure was originally as silent as a rock, but he suddenly opened his eyes. 2 rays of blue light pierced through the water for dozens of miles. Someone has already reached that step. I'd like to see what your end will be. With that, the figure suddenly disappeared. In the Blood Beast sect, on the 4th floor of the Blood Prison, the dozing venerable beast suddenly woke up. It raised its head and seemed to be able to see through all the restrictions and distant space. Its eyes were filled with fear. Heaven has descended again. Ling Shiqi was already bathed in blood. The eye in the sky hadn't done anything, but he was already heavily injured. The eye also transmitted a thought. Ling Shiqi didn't understand anything else, but he understood one sentence. Heaven cannot be touched. Boom! The giant eye's eyeball moved slightly, and Ling Shiqi's body suddenly exploded into countless pieces. He didn't even have a chance to resist heaven. The giant eye slowly closed, but just as it was about to close, the giant eye suddenly opened. Because Ling Shiqi wasn't dead, only a pile of broken straw was left in the place where he had been. Substitute doll. This was the life-saving trump card that Ling Shiqi had specially exchanged from the system space. He had originally prepared it for Meng Tianzong. Even if he couldn't avoid Meng Tianzong's illusion and was killed once, he could use the substitute doll's resurrection to find an opportunity to teleport into the underworld and save his life. He didn't expect to use it here in the end. Ling Shiqi was resurrected. He communicated with the underworld and was about to teleport in. Who would have thought that the moment the giant eye opened, it would seal Ling Shiqi's consciousness, and his body would be obliterated. This time, the giant eye didn't close. Instead, it looked for a while. Sure enough, a few rays of white light were flickering slightly. It was a pure white stone. The white light flashed and formed the figure of a person. It was Ling Shiqi. He wasn't dead, but the system space was missing a piece, the resurrection stone. At this moment, Ling Shiqi finally felt a sense of despair that he hadn't felt in a long time. No matter how strong he was, it was useless. No matter what life-saving trump card he had, it was useless. He didn't even have the chance to escape into the underworld. The path of spirit cultivation was to go against the heavens. This was something that every spirit cultivator knew. Now, Ling Shiqi finally understood that what they had to go against was the heaven in front of them. Meng Tianzong was almost killed by the heaven back then. If not for the remnant consciousness she had hidden, her soul would have been destroyed long ago. Facing heaven, how strong did one have to be to take another step forward? Ling Shiqi couldn't help but feel a sense of powerlessness in his heart. He thought of the Netherworld Holy Lord and the Shifter Emperor in the dream. They were also making various preparations to fight against heaven. Now, it seemed that they had all failed. He was afraid that he would fail as well. In order to deal with Meng Tianzong, Ling Shiqi exchanged 3 life-saving items from the system space. They were the substitute doll, the resurrection stone, and the twin life jade pendant. These 3 items could allow him to resurrect once, which meant that he had 3 extra lives. Now, it seemed that 3 lives were far from enough. It wasn't that he didn't want to exchange for more, but if he directly exchanged from the system and didn't draw a lottery, the price of system coins would be astronomical. He was rich, but most of it was in the Western Desolation King's mansion. He only had enough to exchange for 3 items. Now, the only thing he had left was the twin life jade pendant. If he died 2 more times, he would really die. Ling Shiqi raised his head and looked at the giant eye. He was sure that he would die again in a breath of time. Even if he used the twin life jade pendant to revive, it would be useless. He stretched out a finger and tapped on his body a few times. After he finished, his entire body was destroyed again. Different from before, there was still some blood left behind after he died. After 2 breaths of time, an emerald light appeared. Ling Shiqi was resurrected for the 3rd time. This time, he didn't do anything. He just looked at the giant eye in the sky. There was no fear or despair in his eyes. It was as if he wanted to imprint it in his heart. For some reason, the giant eye also showed a trace of emotion this time. Ling Shiqi could see that it seemed to be a little angry. Then, there was a bang. Without any surprise, he once again shattered into a bloody pulp and was then swallowed by the spatial turbulence. This was his last life. Ling Shiqi, dead. Chapter 873. Thunderfire Dynasty, Imperial Palace. Lei Haoyan's soul clone suddenly flipped the table in front of him. He looked flustered and even a little panicked. The surrounding servants had never seen His Majesty in such a state before, and they were all a little stunned. Lei Haoyan took a step forward and turned into a stream of fire as he charged out of the main hall. Such a huge commotion naturally attracted the attention of a large number of imperial guards. At first, they thought that an assassin had barged in. They took a look and realized that it was actually their emperor. Lei Haoyan burst forth with his fastest speed and came to a corner of the palace wall. He formed a hand seal, and a faint golden door appeared before him. He didn't dare to be negligent and immediately walked in. It was the dragon vein. The moment he entered, he immediately shouted, "Is old Master Qiao here?" The space in front of him rippled, and an elder walked out. It was the Thunderfire Dynasty's mystic comprehending realm expert, Old Master Qiao. "Your Majesty, why are you in such a hurry? Did something big happen?" Old Master Qiao saw Lei Haoyan so flustered and thought that something had happened in the Thunderfire Dynasty. Lei Haoyan cupped his hands and said, "Old Master Qiao, I'm afraid I won't live for long. I see that your Majesty is full of vitality and spirit energy." "Why do you say that?" "I won't hide it from old Master Qiao. A few years ago, a mysterious expert planted a restriction on me. My soul has been corroded, and when it weakens to a certain extent, my physical body will even be taken away." Old Master Qiao was shocked when he heard that. He stretched out his hand and pressed on Lei Haoyan's head. "Your Majesty, I was rude." A gentle force enveloped his body. A moment later, Old Master Qiao said in surprise, "Your Majesty's soul power is indeed a little damaged. Who could have such a strange method?" "I'm not sure either. Just now, I felt my soul shake for no reason, so I wanted to ask Old Master Qiao to help." "Don't worry, Your Majesty. This is the Thunderfire Dynasty, the Dragon Vein. With me here, no one in the world can hurt Your Majesty," Old Master Qiao said confidently. Lei Haoyan wasn't very relieved when he saw that. Not long ago, he knew that Ling Shiqi had already died. He did not have a symbiotic relationship with Ling Shiqi, but there was a hierarchy between them. If Lei Haoyan died, then he was dead. It was equivalent to the Ling Shiqi losing a part of his soul for nothing. If Ling Shiqi died, then his consciousness could take over Lei Haoyan's consciousness and replace it. That was why Lei Haoyan was so flustered. At first, when he was first separated, he was Ling Shiqi's consciousness. But after a long time, Lei Haoyan slowly gained his own independent consciousness. This was especially so when he was sitting on the throne of the Thunderflame Dynasty. It could be said that he could summon the wind and summon the rain. Naturally, he was unwilling to continue being a puppet and a spare tire that could be replaced at any time. Ling Shiqi's death made Lei Haoyan unable to sit still. He immediately ran into the Dragon Vein to find Old Man Qiao. He hoped that in this special place and under the protection of a Tongxian realm expert, Ling Shiqi would not take over his body. The old beggar of the Starfall Dynasty sighed deeply and continued to eat his steamed bun, but it tasted like wax. Dark clouds covered the East Sea. There seemed to be dragons soaring in the sky, but then they disappeared. In the depths of the blood beast sex blood prison, the fear in the eyes of the venerable beast deepened. In the Western Wasteland King's mansion, Oziu's expression was lonely. In the end, he still couldn't escape his fate. Meng Tianzong's expression was grave. He really failed. With his strength, he might not even be able to pass the Tongxian tribulation. Under the Heavenly Slayer tribulation, only death awaits him. Strange, how did he trigger the Heavenly Slayer tribulation? Even if the Netherworld Saint Lord reincarnated, he should have rested and made more preparations. What happened? Unfortunately, she no longer had the chance to find out. At this time, Ling Shiqi was very uncomfortable. He had lost his physical body, his soul, and all his cultivation. Only a wisp of his soul was left. He knew that with his strength, in front of the giant eye, even if he had countless lives, it would be a dead end. Since he was going to die, he might as well fight. Of course, he didn't want to fight the giant eye. He didn't have the strength or qualifications. He thought that since Meng Tianzong could survive, it meant that the heavens wasn't omnipotent. So before he died, he used 2 lives to draw out a large amount of blood essence and then fused it into a drop of true blood. In the end, Ling Shiqi used all his resources to exchange for a secret technique from the system space, blood reincarnation. This was a god-level secret technique that could theoretically allow unlimited rebirth. He didn't have enough resources and could only exchange for a one-time use. Moreover, he knew that even if he was reborn, he would still die, so he hid a wisp of his soul in the true blood. Then he gave up on rebirth and used that power to travel through the spatial turbulence. He originally planned to escape the giant eye's detection and enter the underworld, then find a way to rebuild his physical body. Unfortunately, he couldn't open the underworld in his soul state. In the past, entering and exiting the underworld required a certain amount of spiritual power. The strength was very small, so he didn't notice. Now that he tried, he found that he didn't have the spiritual power to teleport to the underworld. This showed how weak he was at this time. Even if this path didn't work, there was another way. He just didn't know how long he could hold on. At first, it was fine, but as the power of blood reincarnation slowly weakened, Ling Shiqi only felt that he was getting colder and colder. Although he didn't have a body, the soul-freezing cold was even more terrifying. He couldn't see anything around him, only endless darkness. He was like a lonely ghost drifting aimlessly in the air. However, he wasn't really without a purpose. There was a force guiding him, as if as long as he followed it, he would be able to get out of his current predicament. Gradually, he seemed to see a glimmer of light. It was a very familiar soul power that came from the same source. A strong hope appeared in his heart. Ling Shiqi also guessed that it must be his soul avatar. As long as he got close, he could revive through his soul avatar. However, a few strands of golden light suddenly surrounded the light, and then it began to slowly move away. No matter how hard Ling Shiqi chased, he couldn't catch up. Ling Shiqi's heart sank. That must be the soul avatar using some method to protect him. He wanted to continue chasing, but the power of blood reincarnation was about to be exhausted. Once he lost the protection of this power, forget about reviving, his last trace of soul would immediately disappear. Just as he was about to despair, a faint blood-red light appeared in the cave not far away. Strangely, that blood-red light also gave Ling Shiqi a sense of homogeneity. He didn't have time to think, and immediately used all his strength to get close to that blood-red light. In the Northern Wei Dynasty's Wei capital, in a secret room of the Thunderstorm Dynasty's Inn, Delta Origi was struggling to cast a spell. There were 5 blood-red figures around her. 4 of them were like guards guarding the 4 corners of the secret room. A blood-red shadow was slowly forming in front of her. It was the blood-red shadow condensed from Ling Shiqi's blood essence. Delta Origi had tried countless times, but every time she was about to form, she would fail. She had tried everything, but it was still useless. Logically speaking, all the conditions for forming a blood-red shadow were met, and she should have succeeded long ago. However, Delta Origi didn't give up. The more it was like this, the more it meant that the blood-red shadow formed from Ling Shiqi's blood essence would be extraordinary. If it succeeded, it would definitely give her a great surprise. Therefore, she didn't give up. Taking advantage of the fact that she hadn't returned to the Thunderstorm Dynasty, she continued to study her blood-red shadow secret technique. At this moment, the blood-red shadow's body was complete, and its facial features were clearer. Only a pair of eyes were left, which were still incomparably empty. Delta Origi didn't have any strength left. In the past, she would always fail at this step, causing all her efforts to go to waste. In fact, her blood-red shadow didn't need any consciousness. She only needed to split her attention to control the blood-red shadow. As expected, the blood-red shadow immediately showed signs of collapsing. Delta Origi sighed in her heart. She was going to fail again. All of a sudden, Delta Origi suddenly felt a sharp pain in her heart for no reason, as if she had lost something. However, that feeling hadn't dissipated yet, and she was shocked to find that the blood-red shadow in front of her had actually condensed again. Especially that pair of eyes, there was actually a strong sense of surprise and fear in them. Delta Origi was a little confused by the series of unforeseen events. Who would have thought that the blood-red shadow would speak again? She said in surprise, "Xiao Gu." Chapter 874. Underground, dozens of kilometers away from the Wei capital, 3 black-robed men were still maintaining an array formation. A skull was spinning around. Following that, there was a crisp cracking sound as a crack suddenly appeared on the skull. The trio was alarmed as they turned pale with fright. How can this be? One of them roared, filled with horror and panic. The other 2 immediately knelt on the ground and shouted, "Sacred Lord, please forgive us. Sacred Lord, please spare our lives." Phew. 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 A ghostly aura floated out from the skull, condensing into a blurry human figure. Only a pair of eyes could be seen. One was as dark as the netherworld, while the other was as resplendent as the stars. This person's eyes were filled with boundless fury as he roared, "Why did I set up the trap so much earlier? The item in the Archean Aeon realm has already vanished. The body that I have nurtured for 10,000 years has also been destroyed. Who disrupted this sovereign's plan? We don't know. We don't know." The trio trembled as they kowtowed. So this phantom was Sacred Lord Netherworld. After 10,000 years of planning, such an unforeseen event occurred just as I was about to succeed in my reincarnation. Could it be that I am destined to have no fate with the Holy Domain? Sacred Lord Netherworld suddenly felt somewhat lonely. Sacred Lord's divine powers are unparalleled. Seeing Sacred Lord Netherworld's attitude change, the trio immediately began to flatter him. Sacred Lord Netherworld fell silent as his fingers trembled. It was unknown what he was doing. The trio opened their mouths but did not continue speaking. After a long while, Sacred Lord Netherworld took the initiative to pause as a strange glint flashed in his eyes. It seems like there is still a chance for a turnaround. Unfortunately, it has to come to that. Lord of Samsara, what I have done all these years might have been wrong. The 3 of them were confused. Who was the master of Samsara? I don't have a body. It is inconvenient for me to do certain things. The 3 of you will have to sacrifice your lives. Just as Sacred Lord Netherworld finished speaking, he ignored the trio's pleas. With a wave of his hand, the trio turned into a pool of black water that was eventually absorbed by Sacred Lord Netherworld. His body also became much more corporeal. He looked left and right before disappearing from his original spot. On the other side, Delta Origi saw that the blood shadow was speaking in human language, and from the tone and gaze, it was clearly Leng Shiqi himself. For a moment, Delta Origi was a little dazed. She thought that she had accidentally caused Blood Shadow to gain consciousness. However, the Blood Shadow continued, "I am the Leng Shiqi. Now, I only have a remnant soul left. I don't know why I am attached to the Blood Shadow. Fortunately, I have Blood Shadow. Otherwise, this remnant soul of mine would have been completely destroyed." At this point, he could not help but feel a little scared, and the Delta Origi could not help but be shocked when they heard this. "Didn't you go to the Ashen Essence realm? How did it become like this?" Delta Origi asked in disbelief. As far as she knew, Leng Shiqi was always able to face any kind of predicament and escape unscathed. Entering the Ashen Essence realm was clearly a great opportunity, so how did he end up in such a state? It's a long story. Leng Shiqi roughly explained what had happened in the Ashen Essence realm. He told her the first half of the story truthfully, including the fact that Meng Tian was Meng Tianzong and that he had the bloodline of the Astral race and the Dark Shadow race. However, he changed the second half of the story slightly. He only said that he had encountered a spatial storm and had risked his life to escape with a remnant soul. He did not mention anything about the heavenly tribulation, the giant eye, and the Nether Lord. It was not because he wanted to hide it, but because he felt that not only would it not benefit Delta Orgi, but it would also harm her. If Delta Orgi knew that she would have to face the heavenly tribulation and the invincible giant eye if she continued cultivating, it would only cause a knot in her heart, and it might even evolve into a mental demon. It would be detrimental to her cultivation. Ling Shiqi planned to wait until Delta Orgi broke through to the heavenly origin realm or even the mystic enlightening realm in the future. I didn't expect such a huge change in the Ashen Essence realm. I've seen Meng Tian from the Myriad Laws sect a few times. Who would have thought that she was the Heaven Ascension realm expert from 10,000 years ago? Even though it was only the first half of the story, it had a great impact on Delta Orgi. She then frowned. Your body has been destroyed, and your soul has been destroyed. Your cultivation no longer exists. What you need to do now is to recover your cultivation as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the news of your death spreads, the Western Wilderness Monarch's mansion will definitely be in chaos. Don't forget that there were many people who opposed you being conferred the title of king. Moreover, you are so powerful in the Western Wilderness Prefecture. There are many people in the imperial capital who can't stand you. Delta Orgi was right. Ling Shiqi did not seem to have many enemies on the surface, but there were countless people who wanted to ruin his reputation and kill him. Once Xian Haoying and the others came out and announced his death, the Western Wilderness Monarch's mansion would be the first to bear the brunt. Many people would definitely target them for revenge. Although Ling Shiqi was not dead, he was only left with a remnant soul. He did not even have a real body. If he dared to show his face and say that he was still alive, he was afraid that a large number of his enemies would immediately destroy this last remnant of his soul. Therefore, his top priority was to find a way to recover his cultivation. You're right. Fortunately, I can temporarily attach myself to this blood shadow. I'll stay by your side during this period of time. Help me find some heaven and earth treasures that can nourish the soul. Only by stabilizing my soul power can I enter the underworld. Then, my life will not be in danger, Ling Shiqi agreed. Delta Orgi immediately took out a green lantern from her mustard seed bracelet. This thing is called the Netherworld Lantern. I obtained it from exterminating an evil sect. It's a 7th grade treasure. I took it because it's not very useful. I can give it to you. The moment the Netherworld Lantern appeared, Ling Shiqi felt an extremely warm feeling. His body flashed, and the blood shadow instantly shrank before entering the Netherworld Lantern. Phew, this thing isn't bad. It can repair my soul power very quickly. I estimate that it will take about half a month to regrow my psyche power. Ling Shiqi secretly heaved a sigh of relief and continued, as for the Western Wilderness Monarch's mansion, there's no need to worry for the time being. First of all, even if Xian Haoying returns, he might not announce my death directly because he hasn't entered the real Tsangyuan realm. Even if I don't return, I'll at most go missing. Prepare for the worst. If news of my death spreads, there's no need to worry about the people in the royal capital for the time being. Someone will help me protect the Western Wilderness Monarch's mansion. Although it won't be for long, it'll be enough to stall for some time. Delta Orgi understood. The only thing she was puzzled about was who the person Ling Shiqi was talking about was. After news of Ling Shiqi's death spread, the number of people who could protect the Western Wilderness Monarch's mansion could be counted on one hand in the Thunderblaze dynasty. However, she didn't ask any further. Recuperate here. You should be able to find some soul-nourishing treasures in Wei Capital. I'll go find some. Okay, sorry to trouble you. Delta Orgi walked out of the chamber, feeling wistful. This time, Ling Shiqi had met with a calamity. It was naturally very difficult for Gu San to accept, but now she could finally do something for Ling Shiqi. Chapter 875. 2 days later, a stone door slowly opened, and 4 people with gloomy faces walked out. They were Xian Haoying, Kong Jianba, Luoying Fairy, and Meng Tianzong. Meng Tianzong had now turned back into the young girl called Meng Tian. At this moment, the four of them were all shocked and angry. Wei Xuandi, Duke Qi, and Sidu Huanshu were waiting outside, but Chen Xian was not there. Kong Jianba roared at Wei Xuandi as soon as he came out. Northern Wei Empire is really scheming. How dare they use us as tools? Wei Xuandi's face darkened. He didn't expect them to come out so suddenly. Their plan was to let Kong Jianba and the others, who were at the peak of Sky Origin Realm, deal with the black substance. That substance was so evil that 2 Sky Origin Realm cultivators from Northern Wei Empire had died in it. Even Senior Chen Xian, who was at the profound reaching realm, was helpless and even had his life threatened. Therefore, Northern Wei Empire thought of using the all-spirits gathering to lure the cultivators at the peak of Sky Origin Realm to deal with the black substance. If Kong Jianba and the others could really deal with the black substance, Northern Wei Xuandi could take their place. If Kong Jianba and the others couldn't deal with the black substance, they would either die or be disabled. Then, Wei Xuandi could kill them directly. Kong Jianba, Luoying Fairy, and Xian Haoying were all big problems for Wei Xuandi. He couldn't wait to get rid of them. Wei Xuandi wasn't afraid of the Tiangang sect, Luoying's spiritual region, or the Thunderstorm dynasty's revenge because he had the Starfall dynasty behind him. Luoying Fairy glanced at Wei Xuandi, Duke Qi, and Situ Huanshu. She sneered, "The 3 of you are standing here together. What a good move." Everyone present had ulterior motives. However, Wei Xuandi noticed that there were only 4 people who came out of the room. Where was Ling Shiqi? Wei Xuandi frowned. It seems that the king of the Western Baron, Ling Shiqi, died in there. Not good. If Xian Haoying and Ling Shiqi were both dead, there would be no evidence. Now that only one of them is dead, it's hard to explain. Xian Haoying exuded a chilling aura as she said in a deep voice, "I will definitely report this matter to His Majesty. Perhaps we will meet again on the battlefield in the near future." Meng Tianzong was ignored. Although he was from the mysterious 10,000 Laws sect, the mysterious 10,000 Laws sect was no threat to the Northern Wei Empire. After all, they were too far away. However, Wei Xuandi would never have thought that Xian Haoying and the others were brought out by Meng Tianzong. Finding the exit was a piece of cake for Meng Tianzong. The reason why he let those people out was because he wanted to use this opportunity to stir up the 3 empires. Of course, she had secretly altered the memories of Xian Haoying and the other 2. In the memories of the 3 of them, it was a battle with the black substance. In the end, Ling Shiqi died, and the others were lucky enough to escape. Therefore, they hated Emperor Wei to the core. When they saw Duke Qi standing together with Emperor Wei Xuandi, they knew that it was a conspiracy of the 2 dynasties. Following this, one could imagine that between the 3 great empires, as well as between the empires and the spirit cultivator sects, there would definitely be quite a storm. With the turmoil in the outside world, Ling Shiqi had been quite leisurely for the past few days. Ever since he came to this world, he had never been so relaxed. He didn't have to race against time to cultivate because he didn't even have a physical body. He couldn't cultivate even if he wanted to. On the contrary, after experiencing this disastrous failure, he could take the opportunity to reorganize his spirit cultivation path. In the beginning, he walked the path of fusion. He had unlimited skill points from the system. No matter how difficult a cultivation technique or spirit technique was, he could instantly cultivate it to the great perfection stage. Then, through the comprehension of the great perfection stage, he could fuse it with other cultivation techniques and spirit techniques. This was also the guarantee of his powerful combat strength along the way. However, in the spatial storm in the Ashen Aeon world, he broke his previous train of thought and chose a new path. That was the path of destruction. Defy yin and yang, defy the 5 elements, and destroy the world. He did it, but unfortunately, before he could comprehend a spirit technique that was suitable for him, he attracted a heavenly tribulation. The appearance of the heavenly tribulation also proved that Ling Shiqi was qualified to pose a threat to heaven. In the beginning, the heavenly tribulation did not descend. Instead, it evolved into the giant eye. It was definitely a heavenly tribulation that was more terrifying than the heavenly tribulation. This indirectly showed that Ling Shiqi had not taken the wrong path. Perhaps even heaven did not allow the power of destruction to exist. He naturally had to continue on this path. As he comprehended the power of destruction, some of the nomological powers that he had previously grasped also rose. He realized that his previous use of nomological powers was a little crude. Over the past few days, he had some ideas about creating his own spirit technique. In addition to this, Ling Shiqi believed that this failure might be an opportunity. An opportunity to break away from Meng Tianzong, the Nether Lord, and even the system. He had cultivated countless cultivation techniques and spirit techniques since he was a nobody. They were all made use of the system's unlimited skill points. In the middle and later stages of his cultivation, he consciously cultivated some spirit techniques on his own in order to resist the system. However, he still relied on the system most of the time. His original body was obviously left behind by the Nether Lord. At the same time, it had two peerless bloodlines and had been nurtured for tens of thousands of years. It was no wonder that Ling Shiqi could cultivate so many cultivation techniques and spirit techniques without any problems. He had always thought that it was the system's ability. Now it seemed that the bloodline power was also very useful. In addition, Meng Tianzong had done something to his body that could easily destroy half of his cultivation. Such a body was too restrictive and was coveted by too many strong people. It was better not to have it. After a few days of recovery, Ling Shiqi also found that even if he did not have a real body and his soul power was in a broken state, he seemed to be able to use a trace of nomological powers. In other words, the mastery of nomological powers had little to do with the strength of the body. It was more about using the strength of the body to withstand the backlash of the laws of heaven and earth. As long as his soul power recovered smoothly, even if he could use a little bit of nomological powers, it would be enough for him to fight against a strong person in the sky origin realm. It was not that he did not have the slightest bit of combat power. At this moment, he was sitting cross-legged in the ghost lamp. There was a white candle and an incense burner on both sides. These were all treasures that Delta Origi found to recover the soul. Under the nourishment of the three kinds of protection, his soul had obviously grown several times stronger. Although it was still a remnant soul, it could already condense mental power. Ling Shiqi's mind moved, and a wave of mental power spread out. His soul body even shook a little. He did not dare to delay and teleported into the underworld. When he arrived at the underworld, the endless black gas in the entire underworld suddenly stirred up and then crazily gathered towards Ling Shiqi. He did not know what was going on, but judging from his past experience, it should be a good thing. Sure enough, the endless black gas wrapped around him. At that moment, his soul power was replenished by a large amount. In just a breath's time, the amount of soul power he recovered was equivalent to a few days' recovery with the three treasures. Then, his soul body recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, his soul body could already transform into a human form. Ling Shiqi flipped his hand and said to himself, "In just a moment, I've recovered most of my soul power. The rest of my soul power can completely recover on its own. There are still many magical aspects of the underworld that have not been discovered." Just as he was marveling at the wonders of the underworld, the black gas suddenly dispersed and instantly transformed into a netherworld throne that connected the heavens and the earth. A gentle force pushed Ling Shiqi onto the throne. At this moment, all the souls and monsters in the underworld knelt on the ground to worship their master, the Emperor of Fengdu. Chapter 876. As if a mysterious power from ancient times poured into his body, Ling Shiqi's eyes suddenly became a little hollow. In his eyes, it was as if a world was moving at an extremely fast speed, and a person's life and death were only in an instant. There were countless creatures in this world, including all kinds of races. Their life and death were all in the cycle of reincarnation. When to live, when to die, and when to reincarnate were all destined. Not only the creatures, but the resources and spiritual energy in the world were also in the cycle of reincarnation. At the beginning of the world, spiritual energy was like a tide. As time passed, the spiritual energy slowly decreased, and it finally entered the age of chaos. However, at the end of the Age of Chaos, the spiritual energy would recover again, and the cycle would repeat. One day, this world would become a scene of devastation. When a world could not withstand too much power, the world's consciousness would awaken, and it would take the initiative to control the powerful forces in the world. However, after hundreds of millions of years, the world would still be destroyed and turn into dust in the universe. Would the world completely disappear? No, the universe was vast and boundless. The dust of the broken world might occasionally gather together and form a new world again. The world itself followed the cycle of reincarnation. The Emperor of Fengdu had mastered the power of reincarnation. Swoosh! Ling Shiqi woke up and looked at his hands in a daze. In a daze, he seemed to have mastered a mysterious power. The law of reincarnation. He stretched out his hand, and an abyss-like whirlpool appeared, containing the reincarnation of all creatures. If there was a person in front of him, he could easily find out the person's past lives, and he could directly let that person reincarnate. He could skip the process of death and directly send that person to reincarnation. This was just Ling Shiqi had just obtained this power, and he had not carefully tasted and understood it. He believed that as long as he was given some time, he would be able to create many strange abilities. What a mysterious power, Ling Shiqi murmured. In the past, every time he absorbed a member of the Mansion of the Dead, he would receive the inheritance of the Mansion of the Dead. Ling Shiqi was very envious. He was the master of the Mansion of the Dead, but he did not receive the inheritance of the Emperor of Fengdu. This was too unreasonable. The last time the underworld leveled up, the Fengdu Imperial Palace appeared, so Ling Shiqi thought that he would have a chance after the next level up. However, he never thought that he would receive such a powerful inheritance after entering the underworld in the form of a remnant soul. If he had a physical body now, he would be able to break through to the Tongxian realm. Moreover, Ling Shiqi's understanding of the law of reincarnation was just a drop in the ocean. He believed that it wouldn't take him long to break through to the reaching heaven state with the law of reincarnation. As the saying goes, fortune comes with misfortune, and misfortune comes with fortune. It was precisely because of this great calamity that he had obtained the inheritance that he yearned for even in his dreams. As for his strength, it didn't seem to have weakened by much. Although the power of Armageddon was strong, Ling Shiqi did not dare to use it lightly. If he was discovered by the giant eye again, he might not be able to escape again. And the transmigration laws were definitely one of the strongest among the many laws. Boom! While Ling Shiqi was deep in thought, the gates of Fengdu Imperial Palace suddenly opened. With a thought, he instantly entered the Fengdu Imperial Palace. As soon as he entered, he was a little dumbfounded. It was clearly a palace, but there was indeed another world inside. Looking around, it seemed like there was an independent small space here. A heavenly throne hung high above the 9 heavens, overlooking all living beings. In mid-air, there were dozens of black stars floating slowly with the throne as the center. Ling Shiqi took a closer look and found that they were not stars, but strange black gas. Within the black gas, there were some things of different shapes that were faintly discernible. However, most of the black stars were still very dim. He moved his feet and sat on the throne. There were 5 black stars closest to him, and 3 of them immediately surrounded him. Ling Shiqi took a closer look. There was a blood-red long sword, an amethyst gem, and a pure white mask. There were 10 stars in the outer layer, and half of them had things. There were also scattered black stars. He looked up and saw that the most special one was floating above his head. There were actually a few traces of golden light flashing within the black gas. Inside was a golden relic. Ling Shiqi was deep in thought. These things must have been prepared for the people who had already obtained the inheritance of the underworld. He stretched out his hand and the blood-red long sword flew into his hand. Ling Shiqi felt a chill all over his body when he held the sword. At this moment it was as if a sea of blood had risen to the heavens and a mountain of bones had appeared in his eyes. Hiss, good sword! Ling Shiqi could not help but praise. Even though he was still in his soul state, he was not weak. Just holding a sword was enough to make him hallucinate. It could be seen that this sword was definitely a peerless weapon. Unfortunately, Ling Shiqi held it in his hand and sized it up for a while, but he could not tell what level of weapon it was. He had once possessed a stage 8 earth weapon, the Thousand Illusion Dao sword, but that sword had been instantly destroyed during the tribulation. Above the stage 8 earth weapon, there were stage 9 heavenly soldiers. That was a weapon that truly possessed a complete artifact spirit. Even the artifact spirit could transform and fight. In the entire Falling Star continent, the number of stage 9 heavenly soldiers could be counted on one hand. However, Ling Shiqi looked at the blood sword in his hand. It did not seem to have an artifact spirit, and did not seem to be a stage 9 heavenly soldier. Following that, he took out the amethyst gem and the void vertical eye. Similarly, he could not see anything. Perhaps it can only be used in the right hands. Ling Shiqi guessed. He planned to give the blood sword to the Delta Origi after he left. However, at this moment, Ling Shiqi suddenly paused. Everyone else had their own treasures, then what about his own? He looked left and right, but did not find anything else. Ling Shiqi's heart sank. Could it be that there was nothing for him? All of a sudden, the throne beneath him trembled, and traces of netherworld chi spread out. He lowered his head and saw that there was something hidden in the throne. It was a body. To be precise, it was a broken body. The height and appearance of the body were about the same as Ling Shiqi's own, but the key was that this body was rotten. It looked like a corpse that had been dead for a long time. Right now, what Ling Shiqi needed the most was a suitable body. Only with a body would he be able to display his strength to the greatest extent. Right now, he did have a body, but could this body be used? Ling Shiqi decided to give it a try. His soul body moved and entered the body. His soul body was able to easily control this body. An indescribable feeling swept through his entire body, as if he had just woken up from a deep slumber. Then, his body suddenly opened its eyes. In an instant, all the black stars in the Fengdu Imperial Palace started to spin crazily. Outside, the underworld was filled with the cries of countless evil spirits, as if they were welcoming their god. The birth of their god. Chapter 877. The turmoil in the underworld was so great that all the members of the underworld could feel it. Immediately, huge Dharma images appeared one after another in the underworld. They all looked at the Fengdu Imperial Palace in shock. Especially the King of Reincarnation, Ozu, he said in shock, "You're not dead." Ling Shiqi turned his head with difficulty, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard from his neck. When he opened his mouth, he found that it was difficult to speak. He directly transmitted his voice, "Your prophecy was right. Not only did I die, but I also died 4 times. Fortunately, a remnant of my soul was preserved." When the others heard this, they were all shocked. Yushu immediately said, "Gugue, you're so abnormal, who can kill you 4 times? Could it be that those Tongxian realm experts shamelessly attacked you?" Ling Shiqi nodded heavily. He did not want to reveal the heavenly tribulation and the giant eye. "Although I'm not in the Tongxian realm, I'm close. Since you're all here, the news of my death should be spread in the next few days. Don't make it public." Eunuch Gao, who had transformed into the King of Hell, said, 2 days ago, the Dark Thunder Guards already received the news of your death. I deliberately suppressed it. It seems that you have other plans." When he said this, the others more or less looked at Eunuch Gao. So this King of Hell was from the Dark Thunder Guards. He seemed to have an extraordinary status. However, when they thought about how Ling Shiqi started from the Dark Thunder Guards, they felt that it was very normal. "That's right, I just want to see who else is coveting the Western Wasteland Imperial Palace." Ling Shiqi's killing intent was awe-inspiring. At this moment, he suddenly thought about how the soul doppelganger, Lei Haoyan, would react. When Ling Shiqi was on the verge of death, he wanted to occupy the soul doppelganger and replace it. But at that time, the soul doppelganger must have used some method to hide. In other words, the soul doppelganger had already betrayed him. A few days before Ling Shiqi nurtured his soul, he did not sense the existence of the soul doppelganger. Similarly, the soul doppelganger could not sense him. Perhaps the soul doppelganger had already determined that Ling Shiqi was undoubtedly dead. He wanted to see what the soul doppelganger would do. It was time to take back that part of the soul power. Since you have a plan, I'll release the news. Eunuch Gao changed the topic and said, according to what you said, you only have a wisp of soul left. But now, your aura is unusually strong. It's even much stronger than the last time I saw you. Wu Xiang also spoke up. He was shocked when he heard that Ling Shiqi had almost died. The Blood Garment Pavilion had not received the news of Ling Shiqi's death yet. The Blood Garment Pavilion's intelligence network in the Thunderblaze dynasty was not much weaker than the Dark Lightning Guards. Unfortunately, they could not reach the Northern Wei dynasty. He was the most important part of the Blood Garment Pavilion's Blood Seed plan. If he died, the Blood Garment Pavilion's plan would be delayed for at least another 100 years. The Blood Robe Pavilion might be able to wait, but Hen Dao, Elder Gu, and Elder Mu couldn't. Wu Xiang said, I think so too. Right now, you're giving me a mysterious sense of power. As the saying goes, there can be no construction without destruction. Ling Shiqi smiled and said, surviving this disaster allowed me to comprehend some rare things. As long as I'm given enough time, I'll only be stronger than before. Yushu, Xiongming, and the others immediately looked envious. If others were in this situation, they would probably have to live. Even if they lived for one more day, it would be worth it. Ling Shiqi, on the other hand, was even stronger than before. How could others live like this? Fortunately, everyone was used to Ling Shiqi's freakish strength, so they were not surprised. Queen Kalos secretly transmitted her voice to him. After the news of your death spread, the Western Baron Imperial residents will definitely be in trouble. Then, the smuggling of refined iron will be difficult. Previously, Ling Shiqi had asked Queen Kalo to collect a large amount of refined iron from the Western Baron Prefecture. But now, the Western Baron Imperial residence was no longer majestic. It would be difficult to smuggle refined iron in large quantities. Don't worry about this. I'll find someone to watch over the Western Baron Imperial residence. Everyone had their own plans. Ling Shiqi transmitted a few words to each of them before dispersing. After dispersing, Ling Shiqi left the body and left the underworld in the form of a soul. It was not that he did not want to leave the underworld in his physical body, but that body was still broken. After being activated by him, it was slowly recovering in the underworld. Ling Shiqi did not know how long this process would take. Fortunately, he had a shortcut, which was to use merit to speed up the recovery of the body. Ling Shiqi understood the term merit after the last upgrade of the underworld. This was because one of the conditions for the next upgrade of the underworld was to need 100,000 merit points. He looked at the merit points he had. He only had around 40,000 merit points. He did not know the use of merit points, but it was definitely not harmful. Ling Shiqi also paid special attention to it. As long as there were souls in the underworld reincarnating, he would be able to obtain some merit points. The merit points given by each soul varied. Basically, it was related to the cultivation and good and evil of the soul when they were alive. In other words, the more souls there were in the underworld, the more merit points he would be able to obtain. Not only could it be used to upgrade the underworld, but it could also speed up the recovery of the body. So, where did the souls come from? Of course, people had to die. And a lot of people had to die. Was there any way to achieve this? There was only war. After Ling Shiqi came out, he saw Delta Origi at first glance. Only Delta Origi did not go to the underworld just now. I knew it was you who caused the commotion. Looking at your current condition, you should be almost recovered. Delta Origi saw that Ling Shiqi's soul was almost recovered, and revealed an expression of, I knew it. Ling Shiqi smiled. Delta Origi knew him the best. The relationship between the two of them was difficult to explain in a sentence or two. They were loyal and trustworthy, but in this world, being loyal was too extravagant. Especially for the two of them, walking on the edge of the abyss every day was like walking on thin ice. The slightest carelessness would cause them to be smashed to pieces. Even though they knew this would happen, they still pressed forward and wanted to take a step forward. Leng Shiqi had experienced a great calamity, and knew that what stood in front of him was no longer an enemy, but this world. He was afraid that his future path would really be against the heavens. Under such circumstances, the two of them were very satisfied to maintain their current tacit understanding. He took out the blood sword from the Fengdu imperial palace and said, "This sword was found in the underworld. It is a treasure passed down by the ghost emperor of the blood moon. Try it." Oh. Delta Origi was immediately attracted the moment she saw the blood sword. She took the blood sword and felt as if it was connected to her flesh and blood, as if the sword was a part of her body. Immediately after, the blood in Delta Origi's body suddenly boiled, and the blood aura around her soared to the sky. The elemental power of heaven and earth in the capital of Wei became violent, and wisps of blood visible to the naked eye gathered in the sky above the post house. And Delta Origi's aura suddenly erupted. Unity of heaven and man. Chapter 878. The past 2 days in the Wei capital had not been peaceful. After the people from the Ashen Aeon world came out, none of them gave the Northern Wei Empire a good look. The sect master of the Heavenly Dipper sect, Kong Jianba, even announced in public that he had left the Northern Wei Empire and declared himself king. The Falling Blossom spirit domain was considered to be in a semi-hidden state. Although the Falling Blossom fairy was not as firm as Kong Jianba, she also stated that any spirit cultivator that was related to the Northern Wei Empire was not allowed to enter the Falling Blossom spirit domain. As for Xian Haoying, she was still entangled with the ministers in the Wei capital's palace. Leng Shiqi, the Western Wilderness King and the 4 directors of the Dark Thunder Guards, had died here. This matter was not a joke. It could even cause a war. Wei Xuandi was also very busy. At first, Duke Qi of the Starfall dynasty had promised to help him secretly. However, after the matter was exposed, Duke Qi actually left the Wei capital with a few experts in the middle of the night. He was an expert at the peak of the Sky Origin Realm and had a few Sky Origin Realm experts by his side. Who dared to stop him? The only person in the Northern Wei Empire who could stop them was Senior Chen Xian. However, after the incident, Wei Xuandi first asked Senior Chen Xian to enter the Ashen Aeon world to investigate. Indeed, he found many traces of battle. Speaking of which, Chen Xian could stop Duke Qi, but what happened after that? Wei Xuandi could not use Duke Qi as a scapegoat. Otherwise, not only would he offend the top sects and the Thunderblaze dynasty in his own territory, but he would also offend the Starfall dynasty. That would make the whole world his enemy. The All-Spirit Gathering could have pushed the reputation of the Northern Wei Empire to the peak, but it ended up like this because of Leng Shiqi's death. At this time, Delta Origi unexpectedly broke through to the unity of heaven and man realm, causing quite a commotion. At first, it caused a burst of exclamations, but the situation in the Wei capital was too tense, so it did not cause too much of a stir. Leng Shiqi was also very surprised. Delta Origi's cultivation was already at the late stage of the spirit astral realm, so she was indeed qualified to break through to the unity of heaven and man realm. But that was just a qualification. For spirit cultivators like Delta Origi, who had rich accumulations and a deep foundation, it was more difficult to break through to the unity of heaven and man realm. But Gu San only touched the blood sword and broke through just like that. It looked as simple as drinking water. Delta Origi herself felt that it was a little unbelievable. However, at this time, a voice came from outside the door. "Miss Blood Moon, you actually broke through. Congratulations." Judging from the voice, it was Shui Linglong. She must have come to congratulate him. With a thought, Delta Origi's blood sword turned into a bloody light and entered her body. "I have something to do, so I'll make a trip to the Western Wasteland County first." After Leng Shiqi finished speaking, he instantly arrived at the Western Wasteland King's palace from Ozu's side. Ozu was still calculating something. Leng Shiqi crossed his arms and watched with interest. He did not disturb him. After a long while, Ozu faintly sighed and said, "Strange, your heavenly secrets have clearly dissipated. You are no longer a person who exists in this world, but you are standing in front of me." Leng Shiqi listened thoughtfully and asked, "I wonder if you can deduce other people's heavenly secrets?" That depends on the other party's cultivation. My deduction ability has not reached its peak, or it might be easier for someone I am very familiar with. Try to deduce that Meng Tianzong is the creator of the 5 gods flowing light technique and the 1,000 revolutions illusory world technique. Leng Shiqi thought of something. Meng Tianzong had also used some method to retain a wisp of consciousness. According to Oziu, Meng Tianzong should also be the person whose heavenly secrets had dissipated. Meng Tianzong? Oziu frowned, then shook his head and said, "No, I don't have the ability to deduce such an expert. Moreover, he has been dead for more than 10,000 years, and there is not even a trace of him. Even if I want to deduce him, I can't do it." "Then forget it. You can continue to cultivate here. The Western Wasteland King's palace is very stable." "Oh right, this is for you." Leng Shiqi took out a string of grayish-white beads. Oziu glanced at it and his eyes immediately widened. The string of beads was probably strung together by hundreds of beads. Each bead was very small, but Oziu could clearly see that each bead was engraved with dense mysterious words. Others might not be able to see it, but he knew that those were all kinds of secret deduction techniques. To him, this thing was the most precious treasure in the world. Where did this thing come from? I can't just accept such a precious thing. Oziu did not take it directly. This thing is the inheritance of King Luanzhuan. It is yours to begin with. Other than you, it is useless for anyone else to hold it. Comprehend it well. I still have many things that I need your help with. Leng Shiqi patted Oziu's shoulder, and then his soul body disappeared without a trace. In the southernmost part of the Western Wasteland Prefecture, there was a gloomy forest that was filled with spirit energy. In the past, there was a second-rate sect here, but now there was no more. Because 2 people occupied this place. It was said that after the 2 of them came here that day, the second-rate sect moved away from this place. It was so obedient that it was surprising. But later on, when people found out who the 2 of them were, they felt that it was normal. The 2 of them were the Sky Origin Realm experts who lived in seclusion in the Spirit Sealing Strange Valley, Qingzhu and Red Lotus. The 2 of them were willing to leave the Spirit Sealing Strange Valley because Leng Shiqi used a trace of the law of the earth as a benefit. To the Sky Origin Realm, anything that contained the power of law was a dream treasure. Qingzhu and Red Lotus lived in seclusion. As long as it was quiet, it was fine. Almost 2 years had passed. They had been comprehending the law of the earth day and night, but they still had no clue. Moreover, the power of law on the stone that Leng Shiqi gave them had completely dissipated. They were not discouraged. If it was easy to comprehend the power of the law of heaven and earth, Tongxian realm experts would have been everywhere. In these 2 years, you and I have not stopped. Although we have not comprehended the power of law, our cultivation has improved a lot. Qingzhu said with a smile. Red Lotus still had a cold face. It is still not the middle stage of the Sky Origin realm. Sigh, I am afraid we will never be able to touch that realm in this lifetime. That is not necessarily true. Suddenly, a shadow appeared beside them. Qingzhu and Red Lotus were shocked. Who could appear beside them without them noticing? When they saw Leng Shiqi's soul, they could not help but feel strange. Red Lotus said in surprise, "Hey, aren't you the king of the Western Wilderness? How come only your soul is left?" "Humph, I told you, you will not have a good ending." Qingzhu did not speak. He stared at Leng Shiqi with sharp eyes. Leng Shiqi did not even have a physical body. He only had a soul, yet he dared to come out. He was not afraid that his soul would be destroyed, and he could appear beside them without them noticing. What was even stranger was that Leng Shiqi's presence made Qingzhu feel extremely alarmed. He was a great threat. Senior Red Lotus is right. It did not end well for me. Even my fleshly body was destroyed. However, it did allow me to comprehend something. As Leng Shiqi spoke, a faint yellow halo of light appeared around him. The power of law spread out. The 2 elders said in shock, "The law of the earth." Chapter 879. Ling Shiqi waved his hand, and in an instant, the mystical power of the law of earth constantly blocked the attack. 9 earth dragons instantly condensed in the sky and hovered in the air. Even the 2 sky origin stage cultivators were frightened by the power of the sword. He did not dare to use the power of world destruction, and he had not figured out the specific use of the law of reincarnation, so the law of earth was the most suitable. Qing Zhu and Red Lotus only had 2 words in their minds: mystic comprehending realm. However, they were also very puzzled. It was not that they had never seen a mystic comprehending realm expert, but Ling Shiqi's aura was completely different from those people. Ling Shiqi smiled and said, "Can the 2 of you have a good talk?" Old Lady Red Lotus immediately bowed and said in a very humble manner, "Senior Ling, please excuse us." Qing Zhu also said respectfully, "Senior, may I know why you are here?" 2 years ago, Ling Shiqi kept calling them seniors, but now it was completely the opposite. In the end, strength was the most important. Of course, Ling Shiqi did not come here to show off. After all, he did not have a physical body. Although his soul was strong, he could not stay in the outside world for long. The main reason he came to find the 2 of them was to let them guard the Western Wasteland King's mansion for a while. His soul power had almost recovered. Now that he had left the underworld, his soul doppelganger had probably noticed that he was not dead. Under such circumstances, if Ling Shiqi was a soul doppelganger, he would definitely send a large number of experts to find Ling Shiqi's remnant soul and get rid of it as soon as possible. From a certain point of view, Ling Shiqi and Lei Haoyan were indeed the same person. Therefore, Ling Shiqi believed that the soul doppelganger would target the Western Wasteland King's mansion. Moreover, he wanted to use this method to eliminate Ling Shiqi. Before he had a perfect physical body, Ling Shiqi's battle strength was limited and could not casually make a move. However, the Sky Origin Realm experts in the underworld had special identities. Whether it was Tu Deng, Jiuli, or Wu Xiang, it was not suitable for them to make a move. Therefore, Ling Shiqi thought of the 2 people in front of him. Qing Zhu and Hong Lian looked very old, but they still had the drive to reach the mystic enlightening realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have abandoned his place of seclusion for a stone that was tainted with the power of laws. After all, Sky Origin stage cultivators cared a lot about their reputation. Ling Shiqi said, "You flatter me. I'm here to ask for your help." The 2 elders secretly exchanged glances. Qing Zhu asked, "Senior, can you elaborate?" "You too, I am the king of the Western Wasteland, and now that I have become like this, my enemies will definitely hit me when I am down." Before Ling Shiqi could finish, Red Lotus couldn't help but say, "You want us to help you resist your enemies? With your strength, who are you afraid of? Don't underestimate the spirit cultivators in the world. The Tongxian realm is not as rare as it seems on the surface. I have my enemies to deal with, the 2 of you only need to help me guard the Western Wasteland King mansion. This is half of the reward." Ling Shiqi took out a light green bamboo. The moment he saw the bamboo, Qing Zhu was stunned. He could clearly feel that the bamboo was wrapped in the aura he had been dreaming of, the law of wood. Ling Shiqi reversed the power of the 5 elements, and he also had some comprehension of the law of wood. Although he didn't have much control over it, it was still a priceless treasure for the Sky Origin stage. The stone that contained the law of earth allowed Qing Zhu to feel the aura of the law of earth. However, the law of earth was not suitable for Qing Zhu, so how could it be easy to comprehend it? However, the bamboo in Ling Shiqi's hand was completely different. It was the law of wood that was most suitable for Qing Zhu. Ling Shiqi saw Qing Zhu's desire. He turned to Hong Lian and said, "I just said, this pillar is only half of the reward, as for the other half, it is prepared for Madame Hong Lian." As he spoke, he took out another dagger. On it was the power of the law of blood. This power actually came from Delta Origi. After she broke through to the unity of heaven and man realm, the blood sword also underwent a huge change. Before Ling Shiqi came here, Delta Origi had specially looked for him to see what was going on. Ling Shiqi was taken aback when he saw what was inside. This was because the blood sword, under the full power of Delta Origi, could produce a weak trace of the law of blood. Although it was very weak, it was still the power of the law. In other words, Delta Orgi already had the qualifications to break through to the mystic comprehending stage with the help of the blood sword, as well as the power to fight against those in the sky origin stage. Ling Shiqi told Delta Orgi not to be easily exposed, and even attracted a trace of the law of blood's aura, which was the dagger in his hand. Qing Zhu and Hong Lian did not hesitate and said at the same time, "Senior Ling, don't worry, the Western Baron Royal Mansion will be safe and sound." Ling Shiqi nodded. With these two experts in the middle stage of the sky origin stage, unless his soul doppelganger directly sent out an expert at the peak of the sky origin stage like Xian Haoying, it would be impossible to touch the Western Baron Royal Mansion. However, experts like Xian Haoying could not be casually moved, even if they were sent, it would be after a failure. And what Ling Shiqi needed was precisely that time difference. He needed time too much. "Then I will have to trouble the two of you." Ling Shiqi first handed the bamboo to Qing Zhu, then said, "The two of you can settle down near the Western Wasteland King's mansion. You don't need to show your faces on normal days, just protect the King's mansion in secret." Qing Zhu cupped her hands and said, "That's good, we don't like to stay with too many people." Ling Shiqi said a few polite words before leaving. Following that, he entered the underworld residence and began an emergency seclusion. Looking at his disappearing figure, Qing Zhu sighed deeply and said, "This old man finally understands the meaning of the saying, the younger generation will surpass us in time." To go from the Heaven Man Unity realm to the Mystic Enlightening realm is impressive. Fortunately, I didn't become enemies with him back then. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. You were a good person and directly benefited from it. Pity me. Hong Lian said faintly. What's mine is not yours. Let's go to the Western Baron Royal Mansion and set up an array formation. Then, we can slowly study it. Qing Zhu immediately handed the bamboo over with a smile. At the same time, in the Thunderblaze dynasty's palace, Emperor Lei Haoyan had not attended court for several days. After hiding in the dragon vein for a few days, he realized that he was fine. At first, he thought that Ling Shiqi was dead, so he was naturally overjoyed. After leaving the dragon vein, he learned that Ling Shiqi had died in the Ashen Origin world. This matter spread throughout the world. Some people were happy, while others were worried. Many people also found it a pity that an elite of a generation had fallen. However, when Ling Shiqi's soul power recovered and left the underworld residence, Lei Haoyan, who was the closest to his soul avatar, immediately sensed the existence of Ling Shiqi. Fear. Lei Haoyan was even more terrified than before. No one in this world knew Ling Shiqi better than him. He would suffer revenge sooner or later. However, on second thought, Lei Haoyan realized that since Ling Shiqi had met with an accident in the Ashen Origin world, even if he wasn't dead, he was probably struggling at death's door. Instead of living in fear every day, it was better to take the initiative to attack and kill Ling Shiqi completely. Chapter 880. Lei Haoyan knew about the existence of the underworld. He guessed that Ling Shiqi was hiding in the underworld. Since he could not enter, he had to think of a way to force Ling Shiqi out. The Western Desolation King's mansion was a power built by Ling Shiqi. Naturally, he attached great importance to it, so attacking the Western Desolation King's mansion was the best choice. Furthermore, there was no need for Lei Haoyan to give orders. Among the ministers, there were many who did not like Ling Shiqi. When Ling Shiqi was glorious, they did not have any complaints, but once he lost power, they would only hit him when he was down. Furthermore, Ling Shiqi did not have any relatives or friends, so he was not afraid of revenge. The world had always been so cold. Lei Haoyan only needed to go with the flow. The next morning, as expected, more than 10 ministers joined forces to attack the Western Desolation King's mansion. They even accused Ling Shiqi of dozens of crimes. If word got out, those who did not know would think that Ling Shiqi was a peerless devil. After weighing the pros and cons, Lei Haoyan did not let the Dark Thunder Guards participate. After all, there were many Ling Shiqi's acquaintances in the Dark Thunder Guards headquarters, especially Eunuch Gao, who had a close relationship with Ling Shiqi. Thus, he let the Discipline Commission take the lead and the other major mansions to send out more than 10 Unity of Heaven realm experts and hundreds of Sky realm spirit cultivators to attack the Western Desolation King's mansion. The Western Desolation King's mansion was not weak either. On the surface, they were stronger than these people. However, most of the people in the Western Desolation King's mansion were still part of the Dark Thunder Guards. Now that the Imperial Edict was to exterminate the Western Desolation King's mansion, who dared to disobey? Whoever dared to use their weapons would be going against the Thunderfire dynasty. However, Lei Haoyan knew that Ling Shiqi had many backup plans, so he was not at ease. Monarch Cloud Shuttle, I will have to trouble you to personally make a trip. Monarch Cloud Shuttle was no longer the commander of the Discipline Commission. He had now entered the Imperial Consecration Hall and his cultivation was at the late stage of the Sky Origin realm. Seeing this, the ministers could not help but be confused. There was not even a single Sky Origin realm expert in the Western Desolation King's mansion. Was there a need to send Monarch Cloud Shuttle? Although it was said that there was no harm in being prepared, they said that they were going to suppress the Western Wasteland Imperial residents, but in reality, they were going to seize the Western Wasteland Imperial residents to gain merit. With Monarch Cloud Shuttle gone, they could only scrounge up the leftovers. However, Lei Haoyan put on an indisputable expression, and no one dared to contradict him. Even if they wanted to say something, there was no good reason. After the court session was adjourned, the various parties began to gather manpower as quickly as possible. Lei Haoyan was also willing to let these people use the interdomain teleportation formation in batches in order to eliminate the Western Wasteland royal residents in the shortest amount of time. In fact, Lei Haoyan also wanted to go, but he was afraid that Ling Shiqi would cause trouble again. Unfortunately, as the emperor of the Thunderblaze dynasty, he had to be extremely careful with his every move. It was even difficult for him to leave the palace, let alone go to the Western Desolate Province personally. Before the Cloud Shuttle's sovereign left, he had specifically instructed that the spirit cultivators in the Western Wasteland King's mansion did not need his help. Monarch Cloud Shuttle only had to keep an eye out for any special auras or changes. Any traces of Ling Shiqi must be exterminated. At the same time, before everyone rushed to the Western Wasteland Province, the news had already spread. Everyone in the Western Wasteland King's mansion immediately felt danger. Most of these people were arranged by Lang 17 under the Dark Thunder Guards. After establishing the Western Wasteland King Palace, it attracted many spirit cultivators who came to visit. Of course, there were also a few Blood Robe Pavilion disciples hidden among them. When the Imperial Edict came, many people immediately expressed that they no longer had anything to do with the Western Wasteland King's mansion. In less than 2 hours, more than 70% of the spirit cultivators in the Western Wasteland King's mansion had left. Only Elder Huang, He Fei Chen and the other elders were still willing to stay. Other than that, the disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion did not leave because they had already received orders from the sect. Continue to lie low. The sect would not let them stay and die, so they were all guessing that the sect might secretly protect the Western Wasteland King's mansion. 2 days later, Monarch Cloud Shuttle brought many experts to the Spirit Sealing Strange Valley, just like when Ling Shiqi first arrived in the Western Wasteland Province. Monarch Cloud Shuttle stood in the air and said condescendingly, "By the Imperial Edict, exterminate the Western Wasteland King's mansion. Those who surrender are still people of my dynasty. Kill without mercy." When the last 3 words were spoken, it was like a sudden clap of thunder in the sky. Some of the low-level spirit cultivators immediately bled from their ears and screamed miserably. Those who originally had a trace of loyalty were all in despair. The Thunderfire dynasty actually sent a Sky Origin stage expert, and it was even a famous expert like Monarch Cloud Shuttle. They really did not give them any chance. If they resisted, other than death, there was no other outcome. At that moment, more than half of the remaining 30% of spirit cultivators surrendered. Those who came to suppress them were all smiles. It seemed like the Western Wasteland King's mansion was going to collapse by itself. This trip was really a good one. Looking at the dozens of people still standing in front of the King's mansion, Monarch Cloud Shuttle's face darkened. Are you all going to pointlessly resist? He Fei Chen's heart was already trembling with fear, but he still met Monarch Cloud Shuttle's gaze and said, Monarch Cloud Shuttle has made countless contributions to the Thunderflame dynasty, but now he has unexpectedly fallen in the Northern Wei dynasty. You all did not go to the Northern Wei dynasty to settle the score, but came to suppress the Western Wasteland King's mansion. This truly makes the people of the world bitterly disappointed. The Northern Wei dynasty will naturally have people to deal with them. Moreover, our dynasty's merits do not make up for their sins. Those who have merits will be rewarded, and those who have crimes will be punished. The sins of the Western Wasteland King Leng Shiqi are enough to wipe out his entire family. If you all... Monarch Cloud Shuttle's expression suddenly turned cold. Above the 9 heavens, 2 shocking forces suddenly appeared. The origin energy of heaven and earth surged, and 2 rays of green and red light streaked across the sky and shot towards Monarch Cloud Shuttle. Who is it? Monarch Cloud Shuttle growled. He did not expect that someone would sneak an attack on him. He thought about the Emperor's instructions and secretly thought that the Western Wasteland King's mansion indeed had a trump card. Monarch Cloud Shuttle formed a seal with his hands, and a blazing white light shone from his body. The resplendent divine light covered the sky, and a powerful origin energy exploded out, instantly destroying the 2 rays of light. Discipline Board Grand Commander, you are indeed powerful. In a one-on-one fight, this old woman is no match for you. A blood lotus bloomed in the sky, and the figure of an old woman appeared. There was a bamboo forest growing beside her, and an old man walked out from it. But if the 2 of us work together, the outcome is still uncertain. These 2 were Qing Zhu and Red Lotus, who were hired by Leng Shiqi to protect the Western Wasteland King's mansion. Monarch Cloud Shuttle was surprised. Old man Qing Zhu, Lady Red Lotus. You actually stood on the side of the Western Wasteland King's mansion? Going against the Thunderflame dynasty will not end well. Qing Zhu and Red Lotus were very famous rogue cultivators in the Western Wasteland County, and Monarch Cloud Shuttle naturally knew them. Although they were both rogue cultivators, and their cultivation levels were lower than Monarch Cloud Shuttle's, but the 2 of them worked very well together, and when they worked together, they could indeed threaten a late-stage Heaven Yuan realm cultivator. The moment the 2 of them appeared, Monarch Cloud Shuttle knew that he would not be able to destroy the Western Wasteland King's mansion today. Chapter 881. Many spirit cultivators had different expressions. The people who came to attack the Western Desolation King's mansion all stopped smiling. This was a battle without any suspense, but now it was hard to say. There were 2 Sky Origin stage cultivators on the other side. Although they did not know who was stronger, it was still 2 against 1. Cloud Shuttle Monarch might not be able to win. Cloud Shuttle Monarch did not have much confidence, but he still said, "You 2 are too unwise. I only need to delay you, and the Western Desolation King's mansion will not be able to resist." Is that so? Red Lotus smiled strangely. She then shot out several blood-colored lights. Soon after, the entire Western Desolation King's mansion was covered in blood light. Endless blood energy condensed into a light barrier that enveloped the King's mansion. Cloud Shuttle Monarch's eyes narrowed. You have already set up a formation. You already knew that someone would attack the Western Desolation King's mansion. But I will still say the same thing. All of your actions are futile. Even if I were to retreat this time, Dynasty would only send more powerhouses after me. Not to mention, Xiahou Ba is at the border. He will arrive in half a day after the Imperial Edict. With your strength, I wonder how many punches you can take from Xiahou Ba. Monarch Cloud Shuttle is right. The 2 of us have been entrusted with the task of holding him back for as long as we can. Qing Zhu continued, if Xiahou Ba really does come, it won't be too late for the 2 of us to leave. He was very confident that even if Xiahou Ba and Cloud Shuttle Monarch worked together, they would not be able to hold them back. At this point, Cloud Shuttle Monarch was also in a difficult position. He might be able to forcefully attack, but even if he won, he would lose more than half of his men. He might even be injured. If he retreated temporarily, he would be able to easily take down the Western Desolation King's mansion when the dynasty's experts arrived. It seemed that retreating temporarily was the best choice. This way, he would lose face as Cloud Shuttle Monarch, causing him to hesitate. He also did not understand. What benefits did Leng Shiqi give to Qingzhu and Red Lotus? Moreover, Leng Shiqi was already dead. Why would they still work so hard? Master, what should we do? A disciplinary envoy from the discipline division asked with a troubled expression. Looking at the people around him, Cloud Shuttle Monarch sighed. Most of them were from the discipline division. Many of them had been groomed by Monarch Cloud Shuttle himself, and it would be a waste if they were to die in a frontal assault. He said in a deep voice, "Since the two of you are so persistent, then so be it. We will meet again soon. Retreat." With the word retreat, a large number of spirit cultivators retreated like the tide. The remaining people in the palace all felt as if they had just escaped death. He Feichen violently gasped for breath. "My goodness, I almost thought that I was going to die." Ren Yi stroked his beard and said in surprise, "I didn't expect that His Highness would leave a backup plan for the palace." The old man Qingzhu and Madame Red Lotus are both famous Sky Origin stage cultivators in the West Baron County. Let's think about it. If His Highness is really dead, why would they come to protect the palace? Hiss, you mean? He Feichen quivered as he thought of a possibility. It's not that I want to measure the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain, but look at those people who are usually close to us. After the prince's residence was in trouble, they all ran away faster than the other. Sky Origin stage cultivators are also people. For a dead person, they still have to stand out and go against the Thunder Flame dynasty. What good would that do for them? Speaking up to hear, Ren Ye's eyes flashed with a trace of light. Unless His Highness is not dead. I also hope that he is fine. But the news of His Highness' death is known by everyone. This can't be a mistake, right? He Feichen still did not dare to believe it. Don't forget, His Highness has created miracles more than once or twice. We chose to follow His Highness, and I will also choose to believe that His Highness is not dead. Perhaps it won't be long before he comes back. Ren Ye's voice was firm and powerful, affecting the people around him. Following that, he planned to thank Qingzhu and Red Lotus. Who would have thought that the two of them did not have any intention of interacting with the people in the palace and directly turned into two streams of light and flew away? Madame Red Lotus said with some worry, "Do you think that Xiahou Ba will come? If he personally comes, with Monarch Cloud Shuttle by his side, I'm afraid we will have to pay a heavy price to escape. I don't know if Xiahou Ba will come. If he comes, let's not even show our faces. We already helped Leng Shiqi protect the Western Desolation Palace once, so we won't go back on our words. Even if the palace is gone, it can't be blamed on us." That's true. We can just hide around the palace. On the other side, the news of Monarch Cloud Shuttle's defeat was quickly sent to Lei Haoyan's soul clone. Bang! He directly smashed the table in front of him into pieces. Old man Qingzhu, Madame Red Lotus. He gritted his teeth in hatred. Two Heaven Origin middle stage cultivators were nothing to the Thunder Flame dynasty, but Lei Haoyan was keenly aware of the existence of Leng Shiqi from this matter. It must be Leng Shiqi's secret plan. Then Lei Haoyan's expression became serious. This meant that Leng Shiqi should be in the Western Desolation province. The range was immediately locked down, which was also good news. From this moment on, the game between the two of them had already begun. One of them had to find the other and get rid of him quickly. The other had to hide his recovery as much as possible in order to make a comeback. Now that Lei Haoyan had the absolute upper hand, he had to completely eliminate Leng Shiqi from this world as soon as possible. He knew that Leng Shiqi had the system and the underworld, which was an invincible arcane realm. If too much time passed, Leng Shiqi had many ways to recover. When that time came, it would be Lei Haoyan's turn to constantly worry about his soul being taken back. Men! Your Majesty, your servant is here. His personal eunuch, Zhuiying, walked in with small steps. Pass down the order. Have the Azure Thunder Army's commander, Xiahou Ba, assist Monarch Cloud Shuttle in destroying the Western Desolation Palace. The sooner the better. Lei Haoyan said coldly. Xiahou Ba's strength could be counted on one hand among the Heaven Origin stage cultivators. There were no more than 10 who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him in the entire Starfall continent. With such an expert personally taking action, even if a few more Qing Zhu and Red Lotus came, it would be useless. Your Majesty. Zui Ying, who had just walked out, turned around and returned. Xian Haoying of the Hall of Worship requests an audience. Lei Haoyan paused. He's already back. Very well. Let him in. As soon as he finished speaking, Xian Haoying had already flashed into the room. He said with a serious expression, I heard that your Majesty wants to exterminate the Western Desolation Palace. The Western Desolation King once had great achievements. Now that his entire family is being exterminated before his body is even cold, how many people will be willing to serve the dynasty loyally? Lei Haoyan didn't expect Xian Haoying to say this. What kind of drug did Leng Shiqi feed Xian Haoying in the capital of Wei? Lord Xian, the Western Desolation King, died in an accident. The dynasty has lost one of its pillars. I am very sad. However, exterminating the Western Desolation Palace was the suggestion of my subordinates. I am just going along with it. Lei Haoyan put on a helpless expression. Your Majesty should know better than me what those people are thinking. Xian Haoying sneered. The Western Desolation King died in the Northern Wei dynasty. At this time, instead of putting pressure on the Northern Wei dynasty, they went to exterminate the Western Desolation Palace. This group of people is personally destroying the dynasty's 1,000 years of prestige. In this all-spirit gathering, a large number of geniuses have emerged from the dynasty. For example, that Discipline Commission's Juga Puha and Blood Moon are both geniuses among geniuses. What will those people think when they see the Western Desolation King fall to such a state? Your Majesty, since the Western Desolation King has already died, we should even more nurture young geniuses. We absolutely cannot be blinded by temporary benefits. Lei Haoyan suddenly froze. He wasn't convinced by Xian Haoying. Instead, he was reminded by Xian Haoying. He was reminded that there was a person who was extremely important to Leng Shiqi. Delta Origi. Chapter 882. From an outsider's point of view, Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi did not seem to have much of a relationship, but the Soul Avatar was clear about it. Delta Origi was the only person in the world that Leng Shiqi truly cared about. It could also be said that Delta Origi was Leng Shiqi's reverse scale. If Lei Haoyan captured Delta Origi, then Leng Shiqi would definitely appear. Lei Haoyan secretly scolded himself for not thinking of it before. It was also true that Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi did not have much contact. Then, Lei Haoyan acted as if he was convinced and said, Lord Xian's words are reasonable. Regarding the matter of suppressing the Western Desolation King's mansion, I indeed lack consideration. I will order the Cloud Shuttle Monarch to return to the capital. Seeing that Lei Haoyan was so easily convinced, Xian Haoying himself was a little surprised. However, in his heart, he also felt that this emperor was still able to listen to other people's advice and was not the kind of emperor who monopolized power. Your Majesty is wise, this subject will take his leave. Xian Haoying did not waste time and directly left. Lei Haoyan's expression was gloomy. He waved his hand and a mysterious figure walked over. Go, capture Blood Moon from the Discipline Commission. Remember, your actions must be clean and do not reveal any clues. In addition, continue to send orders to Xiaoba, have him and the Cloud Shuttle Monarch work together to destroy the Western Desolation King's mansion. As you command. The figure flashed and disappeared without a trace. In the Discipline Commission, Delta Origi had just returned to her small courtyard. On her way back, she had already heard the news of Leng Shiqi's death. Recently, she had also heard that the current emperor had sent people to attack the Western Desolation King's mansion. Delta Origi did not pay too much attention to it, because all of this was within Leng Shiqi's expectations. Presumably, he had already dealt with it. Delta Origi's return also caused quite a stir in the Discipline Commission. She had broken through to the unity of Heaven Realm in Wei capital. This kind of advancement was far ahead of the younger generation of the Discipline Commission. Even many spirit cultivators who were dozens of years old were far inferior to her, so when she returned, she was the center of attention. Leng Shiqi became famous in the Dark Thunder Guards and became the king of the Western Baron, whose name shook the world. He suppressed the Discipline Commission. Therefore, the breakthrough of the Delta Origi and the death of Leng Shiqi made the people of the Discipline Commission feel proud and elated. However, the Delta Origi themselves did not think so. She knew very well that the gap between her and Leng Shiqi was like heaven and earth. This small breakthrough was nothing. Thus, as soon as she returned to her residence, she used the excuse of consolidating her cultivation base to decline everyone and continued to cultivate diligently. Delta Origi raised her hand and shot out a blood-red light that turned into 4 blood-red shadows that guarded the secret room. Only then did she feel at ease and began to cultivate. However, not long after, her mind suddenly trembled. An extremely strong sense of danger welled up in his heart. With a "pu" sound, the 4 blood-red shadows turned into ashes in an instant, and a black light quietly wrapped around the Delta Origi. Delta Origi's body trembled. At this moment, a blood sword pierced out. In an instant, a sea of blood rose, and a bloody aura appeared as if it was real. When the sword was unleashed, the blood-chi sword light soaked the world. The might of the sword actually drew upon a trace of heaven and earth origin energy. Under the blood sword, the black light was twisted into nothingness. Ah! A faint sound of surprise came from somewhere. This person was the expert who came to capture the Delta Origi, Jiang Yonghua. He had just entered the Sky Origin stage and had recently joined the Thunderfire dynasty. In order to show his loyalty, he became a sharp arrow in Lei Haoyan's hands. Some things that could not be done openly were left to him. Jiang Yonghua's goal this time was to capture the Delta Origi, not to kill the Delta Origi. Thus, he did not use his full strength and only wanted to capture them. Who would have thought that his attack would be blocked by the Delta Origi? He was a Sky Origin stage expert, and the Delta Origi had just broken through to the Unity of Heaven and Man stage. Even a casual attack from him should have seriously injured the Delta Origi. Jiang Yonghua suddenly felt that he had lost face. Moreover, this was the Discipline Commission. With such a big commotion, a large number of experts would gather in a few breaths of time. Thus, Jiang Yonghua planned to forcefully capture the Delta Origi. However, several ferocious black ghost claws appeared around him. Immediately, a chilly wind blew in the sky. It was broad daylight, but it made people feel as if they were in a ghost cave. However, Jiang Yonghua was suddenly stunned. Because the Delta Origi had disappeared right under his nose. Jiang Yonghua thought that the Delta Origi had used a secret technique to conceal themselves. Even with his senses fully activated, he still could not detect the Delta Origi's trace. Who dares to be so presumptuous in my Discipline Commission? How audacious of him! You're courting death. The aura is coming from over there. Surround them. Today, even a Sky Origin stage expert will not be able to easily leave the Discipline Commission. At this moment, angry shouts came from not far away. Among them, the weakest was at the Unity of Heaven and Man stage. There was even a Sky Origin stage expert rapidly approaching. Jiang Yonghua knew that things were not good. He had a way to escape, but the task given by His Majesty would fail. Ever since he had joined the Thunderflame dynasty, Lei Haoyan had given him missions to assassinate extremely important people. This was the first time he had to capture someone alive. It was obvious that the Delta Origi was an extremely important person. If the mission failed, he would not be able to avoid punishment. However, compared to being surrounded by so many experts, it was better to escape as soon as possible. Jiang Yonghua immediately turned into a black shadow and quietly left along the corners. Unexpectedly, no one noticed. The first to arrive at the scene was a graceful and luxurious woman in a palace dress. She was one of the 4 disciplinary envoys of the Discipline Commission, Lei Mayan. The residence of the Delta Origi was near her. After discovering that something had happened here, she immediately rushed over. After all, the Delta Origi was currently at the peak of her power. As her master on the surface, she had also obtained many benefits. Even her prestige in the discipline commission had increased by quite a bit. Lei Mayan focused her gaze and discovered that the small courtyard of the Delta Orgy had long been destroyed. The air was still filled with a dense blood aura. Most importantly, she did not see the figure of the Delta Orgy. "Princess, what happened?" Immediately after, a tall middle-aged man wearing a golden robe walked over. This person was the current Grand Commander of the Discipline Commission, Gu Shao. He was originally a disciplinary envoy. 2 years ago, he had finally broken through to the Sky Origin stage. Lei Haoyan had supported him and made him the Grand Commander, as well as Lei Haoyan's trusted aide. "An expert ambushed you, I don't know if he's dead or alive. Judging from the commotion just now, it must be the Sky Origin stage. That person's methods of concealment are quite brilliant. Even I could not track him." He suddenly made a move against Blood Moon. Perhaps it was because he was afraid of her potential. Could it be an expert from another dynasty hidden in the imperial capital? Gu Shao guessed. The imperial capital's security is so tight, yet a Sky Origin stage cultivator was able to sneak in. Lei Mayan angrily said, "I must report this to His Majesty. Even if I have to turn the imperial capital upside down, I must find that person. It's better if I go report this. You go to the secret pavilion first to see if Blood Moon's soul jade is broken. That way, you can confirm whether she is alive or dead." "All right, I will go now." Chapter 883. In the Azure Thunder Army's fortress at the border of the Western Desert Prefecture. Pang Ju, the person in charge of collecting intelligence, had just received the imperial edict from the imperial capital. His face was filled with embarrassment. The imperial edict was for Xiaoba and Monarch Cloud Shuttle to launch a sneak attack on the Western Desert Prefecture. The news about the Western Desert Prefecture had already spread. This imperial edict was meant to mobilize Xiaoba, a powerful expert, to completely crush the Western Desert Prefecture. But the problem was that Xiaoba had gone into seclusion. Before he went into seclusion, he had specifically instructed that unless the 6 nations of the Western region or the Starfall dynasty attacked, no one should disturb him. Otherwise, only death awaited. Xiaoba was a man of his word in the borderlands. If he said he wanted someone to die, then they definitely wouldn't live. Anyway, no one dared to disobey him. Pang Ju held the imperial edict in his hands and was a little overwhelmed. He couldn't afford to offend Xiaoba, but he couldn't afford to offend His Majesty even more. If he didn't give the imperial edict to Xiaoba, he would still be dead. So he quickly called a few of his close friends and explained the matter to the Azure Thunder Army's deputy generals. Everyone also felt that this matter was very troublesome. They discussed it for an entire afternoon before finally coming to a decision. That was to place the imperial edict outside Xiaoba's seclusion room. They had indeed given the imperial edict to Xiaoba. As for whether Xiaoba saw it or not, it was none of their business. They weren't being perfunctory. Xiaoba's prestige in the Azure Thunder Army was much higher than Lei Haoyan's, who had just ascended the throne less than 2 years ago. To put it bluntly, even if Xiaoba disobeyed the imperial edict, Lei Haoyan wouldn't dare to do anything. Pang Ju held the imperial edict and placed it outside the secret room. He even muttered softly, "General, I'm here to announce the imperial edict." He read the contents of the imperial edict in a low voice, then quietly left the place. In the imperial palace, Lei Haoyan's sole doppelganger's face was gloomy. A person was kneeling in front of him. It was Jiang Yonghua, who had failed to capture Delta Orgy. "With your strength, you actually let them escape," Lei Haoyan said hatefully. Jiang Yonghua braced himself and explained, "Your Majesty, that Blood Moon used some method to disappear in front of my eyes. I think it's most likely some kind of secret technique or treasure that can teleport." "Disappear directly," Lei Haoyan repeated. His eyes widened as he suddenly thought of a possibility. That is, the underworld can be upgraded. Presumably, after the subsequent upgrades, the members of Underworld would be able to teleport in at any time, making them invincible. Delta Orgy must have entered the Underworld. I miscalculated. Lei Haoyan cursed inwardly. He had never considered this point. However, he also knew that even if he was teleported into the underworld, the location of his body would not change. If the Delta Orgy wanted to come out, it would only appear in the distance. Therefore, as long as they sent someone to guard the area, they would still have a chance. But that was the Discipline Commission, where there were many masters, and Jiang Yonghua had already been exposed once, so he could not go there again. Lei Haoyan waved his hand and said, "You can leave for now. Have 1,000 hands of the wind spirit come and see us." Jiang Yonghua knew that Lei Haoyan wanted someone else to do the job, so he hurriedly excused himself. He was already very satisfied that Lei Haoyan did not punish him. "Ling Shiqi, Delta Origi, neither of you can live." Lei Haoyan's face instantly became distorted. Delta Origi naturally did not die. After she destroyed the first ray of black light, she instantly entered the underworld. However, she did not expect that a Sky Origin Realm Master would actually try to assassinate her in the imperial capital. If she had not broken through to unity of heaven and man at the last moment in the Wei capital, she probably would not even have had the chance to escape into the underworld before dying. She did not realize that the other party wanted to capture her. After all, she had never fought with a Sky Origin Realm Master before, so she could not tell if the other party had used his full strength. Delta Origi calmed the boiling blood in her body. She was very lucky that she did not suffer any injuries this time. She looked around and discovered that the imperial palace of Fengdu was surging with endless strange power. Waves of power that seemed to be able to destroy the world were constantly overflowing. This was the spiritual technique that Ling Shiqi had comprehended in the imperial palace of Fengdu that was suitable for himself. He now controlled the power of destruction, the law of reincarnation, and the law of earth. These powers of law had to be transformed into actual combat strength. He had to create the spiritual techniques and secret techniques that were most suitable for himself. Moreover, even if it was the same power of law, in the hands of different people, it might have a completely different performance. Ling Shiqi was relatively good at this. He had only been in seclusion for a few days, and he had already begun to see results. He was also a little opportunistic because he had used the power of law to remodel the spiritual technique that he was most familiar with in the past. Although he could not completely unleash the power of law's full power, this was the fastest way. After all, he did not have much time. After all, he had to obtain power that was stronger than a mystic comprehending realm master in the shortest time possible. He also had to surpass a normal mystic comprehending realm master without a physical body. Ling Shiqi sensed that Delta Origi had entered the underworld. At first, he did not pay too much attention to it. However, he noticed that Delta Origi's blood was surging. It was obvious that she had just fought with him. She had entered the underworld after fighting with him. It was very likely that she was being hunted down. Ling Shiqi hurriedly stopped and stepped in front of Delta Origi. What happened? Delta Origi's expression changed. At this moment, she felt that Ling Shiqi was even stronger than he had been a few days ago. "I was assassinated in the Discipline Commission." The assassin was a Sky Origin Realm Master. Delta Origi told him what had happened not long ago. Ling Shiqi was truly shocked. Delta Origi did not have many friends in the Discipline Commission, but she also did not have many enemies. Who would assassinate her? Moreover, she was in the Discipline Commission, in the imperial capital of the Thunderblaze dynasty. This was simply a slap to the Discipline Commission's face. Most importantly, the assassin was a Sky Origin Realm Master. After all, ever since Six Directions Spirit Sovereign had brought many Sky Origin Realm Masters into the imperial capital, he had already set up a large number of formations around the imperial capital. As long as a Sky Origin Realm Master approached, he would be discovered. Where did that Sky Origin Realm Master come from? Ling Shiqi's eyes narrowed. There was only one possibility. That person had always been in the imperial capital. There were not many Sky Origin Realm Masters in the imperial capital. Moreover, most of them were in the imperial family's hall of worship and the Dragon Vein. Other than that, there were only the 3 commanders of the Discipline Commission, the Dark Lightning Guards, and the Patrol Guards. What reason did they have to assassinate Delta Orgi? Suddenly, Ling Shiqi thought of a person. He was very likely to be the mastermind behind this. All the Sky Origin Realm Masters in the Imperial capital would listen to the same person. That was the Emperor of the Thunderblaze dynasty, Lei Haoyan. In other words, it was Ling Shiqi's soul clone. Oziu had already told him about the matter at the Western Wasteland Imperial residence. Ling Shiqi originally thought that this was the best time for him to go into seclusion. However, he really did not expect that the soul clone would attack Delta Orgi. The soul clone was right. Delta Orgi was indeed Ling Shiqi's reverse scale. This was also the reason why Ling Shiqi did not dare to interact too much with Delta Orgi. He did not want to implicate Delta Orgi. However, even if he could fool everyone, he could not fool his soul avatar. Ling Shiqi's eyes were filled with killing intent. Some things should be taken back. Chapter 884. In the Imperial Palace, Lei Haoyan paced back and forth anxiously. The Delta Orgi had hidden in the mansion of the dead. Although he had sent people to secretly guard them, there was nothing he could do if the Delta Orgi did not come out. Those in the oneness of heaven and man realm could already abstain from eating. The Delta Orgi could also slowly cultivate inside. As long as Ling Shiqi recovered, it would be the time of Lei Haoyan's death. He could not just sit and wait for death. He still had a chance, and that was the Western Wasteland Mansion. Once Xiaoba took action, the mansion would definitely be destroyed. He believed that Ling Shiqi must be related to the Western Wasteland Mansion. The mansion was the force that Ling Shiqi had painstakingly cultivated. When the time came, it would definitely not be able to hide. However, 2 days had passed, and he still did not receive any information about the Western Wasteland Prefecture. Lei Haoyan was so anxious that he did not even ask about the Imperial Court anymore. He had been waiting for the result. At this time, the little eunuch Zhuang walked in with a slightly panicked look. "Your Majesty, there is no movement from the Western Wasteland Mansion. What's going on?" Lei Haoyan was shocked and angry. He had already ordered Xiaoba to take action. It was reasonable to say that the Western Wasteland Mansion should have been turned into ruins. He did not believe that Ling Shiqi could still find someone strong enough to fight against Xiaoba. Zhuang wanted to say something but stopped. Under Lei Haoyan's furious gaze, he lowered his head and said, "According to the news, General Xiahou has gone into seclusion and did not receive the imperial edict." "Xiaoba, how dare he defy the imperial edict?" Lei Haoyan did not roar. Instead, he suppressed his voice. However, the more he did so, the more it meant that he was extremely angry. Lei Haoyan was also an expert in the oneness of heaven and man realm. In his anger, a layer of purple crystal frost flame ignited all over his body. Zhuang was so scared that he rolled and crawled. "Your Majesty, please spare my life. General Xiahou is a man of his word in the army. No one dares to disturb him when he is in seclusion, so he still does not know that the imperial edict has been issued." "How dare you!" Lei Haoyan was so angry that his hands trembled. And then he suddenly felt a sense of powerlessness. He had been sitting on the throne for 2 years now, and the officials from top to bottom were quite convinced of him as the emperor, at least in the imperial city. However, he had forgotten about the generals who controlled the armies at the border. In the eyes of those people, he was just a brat. It would take a long time and a lot of methods to make those people completely obedient. The plan to deal with the Western Wasteland royal residents had failed once again. In order to completely destroy the Western Wasteland Imperial Mansion, they would either need a peak-level Sky Origin stage cultivator or a few late-stage Sky Origin stage cultivators. Xian Haoying would definitely not destroy the Western Wasteland royal residence. Aside from Xian Haoying, there was another Heaven Origin pinnacle stage existence in the Royal Hall of Worship. However, that person had been wandering around for a long time and wasn't very close to the Thunderflame dynasty. It would be difficult to mobilize him. The only thing they could do now was to send another 2 or 3 experts on the same level as Monarch Cloud Shuttle. However, he had been delayed for a few days. This was definitely the best time for Ling Shiqi. Even Lei Haoyan himself could not guarantee to what extent Ling Shiqi had recovered. After all, Ling Shiqi had the system and could create miracles. If Ling Shiqi's soul power was strong enough, Lei Haoyan would not be able to avoid the fate of being devoured even with Old Man Xiao's protection. The feeling of not being in control of one's own life was too terrifying. It was so terrifying that it made one go crazy. Lei Haoyan's initiative was gradually slipping away, but he could not think of a better way. He had a lot of power in his hands and dozens of Sky Origin stage cultivators under his command, but he still panicked. Just as he was at a loss, a terrifying sword intent suddenly exploded in the royal capital. The sword's cry tore through the sky and a boundless silence filled the entire royal capital. Lei Haoyan was shocked. He turned into a stream of fire and rushed out. He saw that the sky above the royal capital was already shining with 6 different colors. The royal capital's array had been activated in an instant. Ah! Then, a miserable howl echoed through the sky. Lei Haoyan's expression changed when he heard the sound. What made him even more terrified was that he could clearly sense Ling Shiqi's soul power in the royal capital. He had come. He had come so quickly. Lei Haoyan's figure flashed as he rushed toward the dragon vein. Just a moment ago, the Discipline Commission's courtyard where Delta Origi lived had been repaired and was almost exactly the same as it was before it was destroyed. Those who passed by could not help but sigh. It was a pity that the people inside were no longer there. Other than the people from the Discipline Commission, there was another person standing high in the sky, looking down at the courtyard. This person was dressed in a green and white robe, giving people a feeling of elegance and grace. He was one of the Sky Origin stage cultivators of the Hall of Worship, 1,000 Hands of the Wind Spirit. He cultivated the power of wind and could blend in with the wind between heaven and earth. Even the current Discipline Commission's Grand Commander Gu Shao could not detect this person. 1,000 Hands of the Wind Spirit had come on Lei Haoyan's orders to keep an eye on things. In truth, he was also very confused. Logically speaking, Delta Origi should have fled long ago. How could they come back so easily? Even if they came back, the first thing they would do would be to seek protection from Gu Shao. There was no way they would directly return to their own courtyard. He did not know what Lei Haoyan's intentions were, but since it was His Majesty's order, he could only follow it. 1,000 Wind Spirit Hands stared at this place from high up in the sky without blinking. Sure enough, a beautiful figure strangely appeared in the originally empty courtyard. It was Delta Origi. His Majesty is indeed brilliant. 1,000 Hands of the Wind Spirit admired Lei Haoyan in his heart and then prepared to capture Delta Origi. However, what surprised 1,000 Hands of the Wind Spirit was that Delta Origi raised her head and looked at the sky. Although there was a thick layer of white clouds between them, 1,000 Hands of the Wind Spirit actually felt that Delta Origi was looking at him. He had been discovered. Even Gu Shao could not detect his existence, but he was discovered by Delta Origi, a junior who had just entered the realm of one with the world. 1,000 Hands of the Wind Spirit felt that something was wrong. He stretched out his hand and the energy of heaven and earth gathered like a gale, instantly condensing into a huge vortex of wind spirits in the air. Delta Origi's red lips moved slightly. You guessed right. There really is someone hiding in the dark. Swoosh. Ling Shiqi appeared beside her in the form of a blood shadow. His entire body was filled with killing intent as he coldly said, "You're courting death." Immediately after, Ling Shiqi's eyes became pitch black, without a trace of white in his eyes. His entire person seemed to have transformed into the King of Hell, emitting a terrifying aura of death. He gently clenched his hand and a long sword condensed in his hand. He pointed the sword at the sky and in an instant, an endless sword intent of death tore apart the vortex of wind spirits in the sky. The sword intent of death continued to explode. The gates of hell opened and thousands of ghosts howled. This sword that wielded the power of death to the extreme should not exist in this world. 1,000 Hands of the Wind Spirit was extremely frightened. At this moment, it was as if the god of death was standing in front of him and could take his life with just a hook of his finger. That was indeed the case. The terrifying sword of death pierced through the heavens and the earth, turning the fearsome world into a purgatory. Thousand Hands of the Wind Spirit did not even have the qualifications to resist and was directly annihilated. Chapter 885. This sword shocked the entire imperial capital. No matter what realm the cultivators were in, they all looked in the direction of the Discipline Commission in shock. At the same time, dozens of figures shot over. They were the experts from the imperial family's hall of worship. However, after they arrived, they only watched from afar. None of them dared to step forward to investigate. Because Leng Shiqi's sword was far beyond the realm of the Sky Origin realm. When did another Tongxian realm expert appear in the imperial capital? In the eyes of the crowd, a blood-red figure floated in the air. He held a long sword in his hand. Blood chi surged around him, and death aura filled the air. The power of the law was constantly cleansing the area, making all the Sky Origin realm experts fearful. Leng Shiqi appeared in the form of a blood shadow. His face was blurred, so those who were familiar with him did not recognize him. His eyes swept across the crowd, and the biting cold light made the dozens of Sky Origin realm experts retreat. Xian Haoying had the highest cultivation. She stepped forward and said, "Senior, who would have thought that Leng Shiqi would reach out and stop Xian Haoying?" He said bluntly, "Today, I will wash the imperial capital with blood." What a big tone. Just as Leng Shiqi finished speaking, the void trembled. A ferocious spatial crack suddenly appeared in the sky, and a dignified old man walked out. It was the Tongxian realm expert of the Thunderblaze dynasty, Old Man Xiao. The moment he appeared, the Sky Origin realm experts heaved a sigh of relief. It was as if they had found their backbone. It was not that they were afraid. After all, Tongxian realm experts were existences who had grasped the laws of heaven and earth. Even if these Sky Origin realm experts swarmed up, they would still suffer heavy casualties. Only Tongxian realm experts could fight against Tongxian realm experts. Moreover, as long as Old Man Xiao could stall this person, they could launch a sneak attack from the side and activate the Thunderblaze Heaven Punishing Array. Even Tongxian realm experts would die here. You are killing in my imperial capital. How majestic. Do you really think there is no one in my imperial capital? An invisible force revolved around Old Man Xiao's body. Spatial cracks cracked open like spider webs. The power was astonishing. Leng Shiqi sneered. Rumor has it that Old Man Xiao used improper methods to break through to the Tongxian realm. I would like to ask for your advice. Six Directions spiritual sovereign had said the same thing to Old Master Qiao before. At that time, Old Master Qiao could not hold back his anger. Now that the same thing was said by Leng Shiqi, even Old Master Qiao, who was in the mystic comprehending realm, was furious. Very well, this old man would like to see how capable you really are. Just as Old Man Xiao was about to make a move, Leng Shiqi stretched out his hand again. Old Man Xiao, if we fight, aren't you afraid that we'll bring disaster to the countless lives in the imperial capital? Old Master Qiao's expression darkened. This situation was actually similar to when Six Directions spiritual supremacy attacked. He might not necessarily lose to Six Directions spiritual supremacy, but if a Tongxian realm cultivator fought with all his strength, the entire imperial capital would be turned into ruins. There would not be many people left alive. It was the same now. Old Master Qiao had broken through to the Tongxian realm more than 100 years ago. Through the sword attack just now, Old Master Qiao could tell that Leng Shiqi was not very familiar with the power of laws. He must have broken through in recent years. He was confident that he could win. However, he could not use his full strength. He secretly sent a voice transmission to Xian Haoying. How long more before the heaven-destroying Thunderfire formation can be activated? The heaven-destroying Thunderfire formation has been improved greatly. As long as your majesty activates it, it can be activated in a short while. Old Master Qiao frowned when he heard this. Lei Haoyan had hidden in the dragon vein before he arrived. The dragon vein was separated from the outside world. If he wanted to inform Lei Haoyan to activate the heaven-destroying Thunderfire orb, he would have to make a trip to the dragon vein. If a heavenly origin realm cultivator went there personally, it would only take a short while. However, this short amount of time was enough for the imperial capital to face destruction. Therefore, what old Master Qiao needed to do now was to stall this mysterious person. How should I address you? This old man sees that you don't really want to massacre the imperial capital. Why don't you make your move before this old man arrived? Just tell me what your goal is. Old Master Qiao watched as a heavenly origin realm cultivator quietly left. That person was Silver Light, who was known for his speed in the Hall of Worship. He could reach the dragon vein in the blink of an eye. Thus, old Master Qiao stroked his beard and slowly spoke. Ling Shiqi saw through old Master Qiao's goal with a single glance. He laughed inwardly. In truth, this was exactly what he wanted. He did not have a physical body. His soul was attached to the blood shadow, so he could not use much of his strength. That sword strike just now was the result of his comprehension of the law of yin and yang, the power of the underworld, and the power of the sword Tao. It was only a half-finished product, so it had not yet been named. However, even though it was only a half-finished product, it still possessed the strength of a Tongxian realm cultivator. Unfortunately, in his current state, he could only use that kind of power a few times. He did not have the confidence to fight old Master Qiao. He had chosen to violently kill people in the Discipline Commission in order to intimidate the many experts in the Hall of Worship. Then, he would use the millions of lives in the imperial capital to make old Master Qiao hesitate. In this way, the Thunderfire dynasty could only buy time to activate the heaven-destroying Thunderfire formation. This was the key. Ling Shiqi knew about the restrictions placed on the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. If he wanted to activate the heaven-destroying Thunderfire formation, his soul clone, Lei Haoyan, had to do it. Last time, when Ling Shiqi had returned to his physical body, he had a chance to take back a portion of his soul and take over Lei Haoyan's body. However, his soul clone had been wrapped in a faint golden light. In the Thunderfire dynasty, there was only one place that could protect his soul clone. That was the dragon vein that gathered the Thunderfire dynasty's fortune. With his soul clone hiding in the dragon vein, Ling Shiqi's soul form would have a hard time finding a way to enter. He needed someone to lead the way. Ling Shiqi had noticed that one of the Sky Origin stage cultivators was missing. He abruptly shouted, and a stream of mystical power of law was stirring up the entire area. At this moment, two figures appeared on his left and right. The aura of these two figures was no weaker than his own. I am the past avatar. I am the unparalleled avatar. These two figures represented Ling Shiqi's previous life and his future life. Past, present, and future. 3 avatars. Old Master Qiao was shocked. This is the law of time, or the law of reincarnation. The law of time, the law of reincarnation, and the law of space were known as the most powerful supreme laws. Other than that, only the laws of yin and yang, the 5 elements, and other origin laws could compete with them. In the world, most mystic comprehending cultivators had only comprehended one of the laws of the 5 elements. Therefore, there were very few people who could control the supreme laws. He himself had grasped the powerful law of space. Unfortunately, he had used a trick and could only comprehend the surface of the law of space at most. Even so, it was enough for him to roam the falling star continent. However, at this moment, he actually saw another person who had the supreme laws. Because old Master Qiao had never seen a spirit cultivator who could control the law of time or the law of reincarnation, he couldn't tell which one Ling Shiqi was at the moment. Ling Shiqi's past avatar said, "Old Master Qiao, you have good eyesight. I have just mastered the divine art. In the world, only you can compare to me." He was still talking. Old Master Qiao's attention was inevitably attracted by the past avatar. However, he didn't know that Ling Shiqi's present avatar was actually just an empty shell. The real Ling Shiqi was still secretly following the Heaven Origin cultivator to the Dragon Vein. Ling Shiqi had been to the Dragon Vein before. It was there that he reached the half-step spirit gang realm. He remembered that eunuch Gao had brought him in from the palace. This time, he followed that person to the palace. That person knew the seal to enter the periphery of the Dragon Vein. Perhaps because the imperial capital was in danger, that person was not too careful and directly opened an entrance and went in. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.